I just like calling him DJ TJ because, you know, Donald John Trump Jr. Wait, did you hear that story about when Trump tried to call up someone and his fake name was like John Barron, which is like, that's his middle name and his son's name, and it's like,
amazing.
He's not a smart guy. Like
it's like when someone has to when you have to invent a fake band name to impress someone, and you're just like, John Barron.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think my favorite fail son is probably DJ TJ. I like calling him that. He's got the rhythm.
Nemesis of DJ Mule. Yeah.
It was when I think it was the first time someone called him a chinless wonder. I was like, oh, he might be my fave.
Yeah. You know what? My favorite fail son success is Tom Hanks's kid.
Oh,
what's his name?
Shit Hayes.
Yeah. He's a fail son, but he is so fail that he's like winning.
Wait, Chet Hanks? Didn't he accidentally participate in White Boy Summer though? Like really kick off White Boy Summer?
Oh yeah, no, he totally did.
I think he created White Boy Summer.
He's just like this kind of like dude that like bumbles into everything, and then all of a sudden he looks around, he's like, wait a minute, these guys are Nazis.
Why do all these Nazis keep supporting my shows and everything?
On Atlanta as well, basically like playing kind of a version of himself, which I think was like quite funny, and I wonder how self-aware he was about that. But yeah, my favorite fail son is probably is one of the children on Succession, which, you know, like is not a real fail son obviously, but is this like super loser, kind of like Wyatt Coke, but like I mean, like more like a mix between him and DJ TJ actually, which is perfect. But you know, has like potential presidential aspirations and is just like very useless, but like has never actually had a job, but believes that could be the job for him. And yeah, very amazing how everyone just kind of like humors him constantly, but is kind of laughing at him behind his back. It's pretty great.
Awesome.
I feel like it's important to remember that all rich guys with any kind of hereditary wealth are fundamentally fail sons. Like, we shouldn't think of Trump Sr. as the success story there. He's like fallen upwards through all the worst. There's probably something to look at in like fail sons igniting fascist shit, right? Like like Chet Hanks accidentally starting White Boy Summer. If it's Marx's description of ideology, they don't know what they're doing, but they're doing it nonetheless, right?
Yeah.
I mean, Chet, there he is, accidentally inspiring like White Boy Summer.
Yeah,
being
like,
a neo-Nazi thing.
I feel like a lot of the children of well, you know, like some ones that we're more familiar with, a lot of the children of like kind of more reactionary billionaires or whatever, there's like always like the one that comes out that has like kind of like a liberal kind of slant or whatever, and it's like usually they're not progressive at all, but because they're not totally ghouls, people are like, oh, they're the good one or whatever, and then
that's
they're actually still terrible. But yeah, Connor Roy in Succession is the epitome of that. He's like the hippie libertine kind of one, but is like just totally as evil and as fascist as anyone, perhaps more so than any of them. But you know, just kind of like is the chill one, the fun one, you know.
I've probably mentioned what I can't say about Bill Gates's family on stream before, but I couldn't possibly say if I knew anyone who knew them, and I definitely couldn't say if they had a bad relationship with Bill Gates's kids because they beat them in a horse race once when they were younger, and they held a grudge for many years. And if I did know that person, it would probably be a bad idea to say that they said that Melinda Gates was the only normal person in the entire family.
Wow, amazing. Those horse grudges.
Those the ones that'll come back to you. Welcome to Red Planet, everyone. This is the show we're doing. It's a weekly Call Me Roundtable where we chat about how to make the world a more based place to live in. Speaking of based, Kira, you're pretty based. What's the most based thing you did this week?
Well, this week was kind of a smattering of semi-based things, but nothing in particular was extremely based. I did have my friend Aronach on my stream this week, and we discussed like casual ableism in language and like how frustrating it is to have conversations with people on the left about ableism, because it's still an area that tends to I see people on the left being still quite reactionary about it, and also being confronted about it. So that was really nice to be able to connect with her on that and have that conversation. But also my community and I are going through the Fast and the Furious cinematic universe. And so we're doing that, and I feel like that's benefiting my mental health.
Is that just the series, or is there more? I've never seen any of them.
It's this. Oh my god, they're great.
Clearly, I got to get in on this watch party.
Oh yeah, no, they're like, if you like fast cars and like
people being furious,
people being so mad, seething. Yeah.
Oh damn. Okay.
It's been really fun. It's been a good.
You should follow it up with what my personal favorite from the Fast and Furious cinematic universe, which is actually not a part of the Fast and Furious cinematic universe, but it was released as a potential, well, no, a very, like, they wanted it to compete. They made a movie called Torque. It's Fast and Furious, but with motorbikes, and it's like the perfect time capsule of the early 2000s.
Oh my god.
If you watched it at the time, it would have been terrible, but watching it now, looking back in it, it's fucking hilarious. There's
awesome.
like a scene where these like two women are having a knife fight, and they're like jumping from motorbike back and forth, and then one of them does like this big like skid and like turns around, and she's like in front of this giant Mountain Dew billboard, and it's like takes up the entire frame, and it's just like it's so perfect, and every scene looks like a music video. There's like a new metal soundtrack. Ice Cube is there. They all have like
motorbike knife fight. Honestly, like hell yeah.
They all have custom embroidered like motorbike jumpsuits with like tribal dragons and stuff on them. It's like, it's very good.
So it's just like when you're watching the George Romero zombie movies, you really have to watch like the Italian like Zombie and Zombie 2 and like the the all the spin-offs, because like what is a Fast and Furious marathon without we have Fast and Furious at home?
Exactly, that's it. But it's the best part is that it's like full of digs against the Fast and Furious. Like there's that little kind of like little throwaway lines, or like the intro is like, you know, like the red and yellow cars from the first Fast and Furious, they're like driving along, and a kind of motorbike kind of like makes them spin out, and it's just like there's like a sign that comes up that says like bikes rule, cars suck, or some shit like that. It's fucking hilarious.
Oh my god.
Like they were trying very hard. It's no, it's if you're riding the Fast and Furious wave, then you definitely got to look at what else was happening in the world at the time. But yeah, no, very base though.
Yeah, but I want to know what my friend Tim has been up to this week. What was the most base thing you've done this week, Tim?
I don't even know. I was thinking about it. I've just been like, I've been working so solidly lately. Even I like worked at this, I tattooed at this kind of like event thing that my friend put on yesterday, and was like just all the way up till like midnight, just like working solidly. So I haven't really any time to do anything outside of that. So I've done the opposite of based this week by not taking care of myself and overworking myself to death. So,
you know what you could do to fix that is
what can I do?
Fast and the Furious cinematic universe. Start
Maybe,
tonight.
Perhaps. Yeah. That might be enough.
That's your prescription. I'm writing you a prescription.
What is it? It's the 10th one is coming out now, but the 10th one, which is going to be a trilogy. I'm like,
so like,
oh my
apparently the order in which the release is not the order that they're like that the story unfolds chronologically.
Oh, genius.
So they kind of do that shit too. I don't know. It's very complicated. It's far more intricate than people like to give it credit for.
I feel like these are all like Vin Diesel ideas, you know.
God, like, that man is so hot.
Oh. I love how he talked in an interview how he like, because he helps write a lot of the movies now. He didn't initially, but I think he like kind of stepped in, and he just he writes them in the same way that his friends would come up with their ideas for Dungeons and Dragons, which I don't know what he meant by that, because you know apparently he is a huge D&D player, but I'm assuming that it's just like,
he is. Oh my god, is he a nerd?
He is. No, he really, well, allegedly he is.
Unless that's like some sort of, you know, like,
no, I've legitimately seen other people like question his nerddom. Apparently he takes it very seriously, but
God, that man is so attractive. Oh,
so but no, Yeah, like I'm guessing he just like sits around and he like has a bunch of tables and he rolls some dice and he's like, damn, the cars are going to space now, you know? So yeah, that's how we go. So how
That's
about
how
you? What
Elon
is
Musk makes business decisions as well, I
Oh
guess.
yeah, I know, right?
I read something, I don't know if it's even true, about something about like how he's going to turn off Twitter for like Europe. I don't
Oh,
know.
incredible.
Is that
Finally.
even
Okay.
Sorry, that's not,
Yeah.
this isn't news. This is me just like completely bullshitting. I saw a tweet probably when I was like
No, please,
taking a
Elon, pull the
shit, and then
plug.
I
I'm
just kept
begging you.
scrolling. So
Yeah,
now I'm gonna
yeah,
yeah, like people
Oh
in my
no.
Discord were like, thank you, God. Thank you, Jesus. Just end it. Just
yeah.
Oh
end
no,
it.
Twitter. Oh, what will I do without Twitter? Shit.
Uh,
It's all right. I'm already on Blue Sky. I'm really enjoying the idea of Elon getting up every morning, knowing like Jack Dorsey is right in his rearview mirror, gaining every day.
I need more dopamine than Blue Sky can give me, though. It's so like low
It'll get
dopamine.
better though. It's just a beta at the moment,
Yeah,
just like
yeah.
Jack Dorsey. But soon it will be.
Just a
No,
beta.
wait. No, hang on. Software development goes the other way. You do the alpha first. So
Oh yeah.
soon it'll be a delta, and then he will become an alpha,
Wow.
and Elon will be the beta.
This is very complex. It's a lot too much math for this episode already.
But yeah, what was the most base thing you did this week, so?
Gay sex is how I introduce a segment where I'm not talking about a base thing I did, but just like my life updates and things that make me happy.
Gay sex is pretty base.
Yeah, I mean that's why I introduced the segment like that. Yeah, I mean I was just telling you before I had a picnic in the park with my friends yesterday to celebrate one of my friends' birthdays. I've been like in the sunshine and hanging out with my friends a ton more. I've been off the show for the last like 2 or 3 weeks. So like it's kind of a month long like most base thing I did. I've last month has basically been I've been working on my big project I've been working on for like 2 years and it's really nearly done. The world is not ending. My anti-Duma thing. It's gonna wind up long as hell. It's a huge project. It's been taking up so much brain space, and I'm really looking forward to like my brain emptying out and me having not a single thought in my mind. Which has been a lot of my month actually. Like just hanging out with friends, kissing girls being in the sunshine, yeah, just chilling. And then and yeah, part of the reason my month's been like utter chaos is Nat's been away in Armenia with our friend who was getting FFS with the same surgeon that I went to. So it's been also kind of hard, but Nat's come back this last week and it's been delightful to have her back. So that's another thing that's maybe making me happy in my life right now. And I booked my next studio tattoo, which is a tramp stamp that says Public Universal Girlfriend. So those are
Amazing.
a collection of nice things in my life, and I can call them based for the necessity of the show. But what base things have our viewers been up to? Because we now have a segment about our viewers.
Question. We love our viewers and our audience.
We turn the lens around and we look at the listeners and the viewers and the creeps, and we say, "What are you doing?" Kara, what base things of we have a base thing, yeah?
Yeah, so one of our base audience members, Robin, told us, I make tips at work, so every week or so I take a bunch of cash to the ATM to deposit it. Today, the machine rejected a couple 20s, so I walked around and gave them to a couple of homeless people I met. Also, I put an Antifa sticker over someone's thin blue line bumper sticker.
Oh my god. That must have pissed them off so good. That's hilarious.
That must have been by the way, we do not advocate for stickering people's personal property. However, we are simply here to report on what other people are doing as the political climate unfolds further. So Robin, thank you for your submission.
I was gonna say, I just imagine like some dude coming back to his car with his like thin blue line sticker or whatever and seeing the Antifa over it and just being like, they're watching me, like, just thinking that it's like, it's like the Antifa, like, like the super network is like,
because they do
cameras pointed towards him, that's the thing.
They do have this impression of Antifa like that.
Reddit / targeted individuals has a new member today.
Antifa gang stalking. Yeah, I wish.
So we want to know what base things you've done. Unlike these illegal crimes, if people keep on sending us illegal crimes, we'll probably report on it because that's our job as journalists. But we want to hear what based things you're doing. You can message us on Twitter, Instagram, or TikTok and send an email to based@redplanetshow.com. Include your name and pronouns if you're cool with that, and we may shout it out on a later episode. In the meantime, we have some news, and I forgot that I was the first news. Well, I'm not the first news article, but I have the first news article. I've been the news before when the penis woman thing happened. So I want to clarify to everyone that we're actually talking about Target. Target stores dropped Pride merchandise in response to right-wing terror campaign. I don't know if people have been seeing this, but a lot of far-right chuds have been just going into Target stores and smashing up Pride displays. And yeah, Target have taken the corporate cowardly shithead move to just capitulate to them and to pull their stuff. So retail chain Target has removed some Pride merchandise from stores after right-wing commentators and their followers on social media attacked the company over support of LGBTQ queer people. Right-wing ghouls made numerous false claims about the retailer, including that they are selling tuck-friendly bathing suits in children's sizes, while videos of customers knocking down a Pride display at a Target store went viral. Target, as far as I'm aware, did do a tuck-friendly thing, which is already corporate eye-rolling cringe. A lot of dolls would not appreciate that as a way to draw in the transgenders, but some other people would. It's fine. And then people started spreading this idea that they were selling them in children's sizes, and they weren't. Among the products removed includes items from April, a UK-based brand created by artist Eric Carnell, whose Satan respects pronouns design was singled out despite not being carried by the chain, resulting in death threats and other abuse. In a statement, Target claimed they were removing items that have been at the center of the most significant confrontational behavior, citing threats to employees. And I think that the safety of their workers is a valid concern, but it's also they're leveraging it to say that they won't stand by this stuff, where what they could easily do is tell their security that they should immediately intervene, be wary and immediately intervene and kick out right-wing dickheads who've shown up to smash up a rainbow display.
Yeah, and especially how it's they're not saying they won't be okay, take this shit out and then we and then that's it, then we'll be happy or whatever. It's just for them it's we won, we got Target to take the stuff out. And it's because these are the people that fundamentally just do not want to see anything that they think is queer or whatever in public spaces. Yeah. So it's it's just going to shift to the next thing, right? It's going to be, okay, now it's Pride themed merchandise at Target, but it's just going to be something else next, and they're going to be yeah, it was awesome last time we just, last time we went and we tipped out Bud Light and then we went into Target and we did this or whatever, and it's gonna be something else, there's absolutely no kind of appeasing people like this.
What I want to know is, can I go to a Mr. Beast display and completely throw it to the ground and get that shit removed from all Target stores?
Can we just go into a Tesla dealership and just start pissing? Can we do that?
Yeah, start pissing all over the place.
Actually,
yeah.
If you're too powerful for the state to subdue, anything is legal. So we just got to get real swole and then get real hydrated,
real pissy. Yeah,
get down to Tesla, just piss real hard.
I just think it's rich that Target, with its tons and tons and tons of money that invests towards surveillance security, couldn't actually manage to prevent irate right-wing assholes from doing what they want to do, but they manage to find ways to arrest people all the time.
Tim's exactly right. If you back down on this stuff, fascists are just this is great, this is a win for us.
Of course.
I think a lot of people are also caught by the idea that because of right-wing media talking about Antifa terrorists, it's gonna be a kind of lose-lose situation where if people show up to stop fascists in any way, that media will then report there are these terrifying black bloc thugs, but no, fascists actually hate talking about when they take an L, and when they take an L they run away from it because they're a bunch of fucking cowards.
Well, yeah, it's the thing. I think being embarrassed is their one of their greatest kind of fears, right? It's they don't care about being wrong or being mean or being whatever like that. It's just
I mean, that's why they try to dress up as these little nail these army LARPer types with their super tactical this and that. They're trying to desperately show up as tough and unembarrassing people.
The performance of force is their whole thing. And it's so cringe, like they end up structuring all their organizing around like militaristic stuff as well.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I did find it weird. Did any of you see the Boycott Target rap song?
No.
There's a guy.
I heard about the MAGA guy.
Oh, it's this guy, Jimmy Levy. He's like a kind of like rapper, singer dude, whatever like that. And he's deranged, but I feel like it's definitely like a marketing thing for him because he's like pushing this whole like this is the most censored song ever. It's terrible, but it's like this song about how like like targeting your kids or whatever. But it's this really wild thing where he's like talking about like he's like rapping about like very Christian stuff and like all this kind of shit about like Target represents Satan and all this kind of shit like that. But then it's like, which I think is also kind of weird because like if you make a rap song where you're saying that Target are deliberately targeting children, they're satanic, they're pedophiles and all this kind of shit like that, surely that opens you up to like a whole bunch of legal stuff. But that's just me, just like whatever. Anyway, but this whole thing is like this crew of dudes and they're all wearing like like obviously like they're all wearing like super like so many chains and everything like that, and it's like he's wearing like a shirt that says like Las Vegas, and there's like other dudes, and it's just like this funny thing where it's like these people that are like just covering themselves and like just this huge amount of like wealth and everything, and they're like and then they're in this like Target store talking about how like like this is evil, like this around me, like they're walking down toy aisles being like this is like this is sin, this is disgusting, this is satanic or whatever like that.
The people whose like nearest big store just is a Target who like can't afford to go change and shop anywhere else, they're just gonna be like, you guys are fucking assholes.
Yeah, exactly. It's so wild, and it's just like this is like so bizarre that this is like like this is I guess like this is their version of Christianity, right? Like like these are the I don't know, these are it's I mean maybe it strikes me as especially weird coming from like outside of America or whatever, the like American Christianity. And I know like obviously not all of it's like this is just like a very specific brand of American Christianity, but it's just like it's so wild to me watching this, like these dudes that are very much like like obviously like very very wealthy. I don't know, like and it's like you see other stuff in his music and still like rapping about like performing violence and all this kind of shit like that, and then he's like in the toy aisle in Target talking about like this is the evil right here,
like I've obviously never actually been to America, but like I was on the I was on a podcast with my friend with Tier actually, who came onto the show a very early episode, and like we were chatting about the Christian identity movement, and it's really bizarre to hear like for me it's like I'm reading and researching in an anti-fascist capacity and learning about the stuff kind of academically, and then like to chat about it with her and her friend, and they're just both like, well, we grew up in California and neighboring states, and like it's this shit is everywhere. And I'm like, no, I read this in a book, and it seemed like the most absolutely cuckoo bananas nonsense you could possibly imagine. And you're saying that like every normal church has a sign outside talking about the rapture? Come on, what?
It's wild because that all of that stuff is like very niche over here. Like that kind of Christianity is like there's definitely a presence of like the kind of I guess the mega churchy kind of stuff, but just nowhere near on the same level, right? Like there's like this one that's really bad. I remember when they were in lockdown, they put out a video that kind of went viral, and it was like the pastor dude talking about how important it was for people to continue tithing through the lockdowns, and he was like literally like sitting in front of his infinity pool, and it's just like, whoa, like you are wild. But but it's not really the same. We don't have like the same links to like I guess like a lot of the really kind of far right kind of stuff. Like there definitely is like a very right-wing conservative Christian movement over here, but it's not it's nowhere near as pervasive as America has. So it always just strikes me as it's so bizarre.
I was in the South for a bit. I lived there for like a second, and I remember being amazed that there's like a a marketplace of churches. So you can like drive down the street and there's like two churches on one side of the road, like another church on the other side of the road, and they all have like kind of like LED billboards up, like trying to advertise their churchiness, and they're all kind of like competing for churchgoers. It's something else. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, that sounds bizarre.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
Tim, do you want to tell us about the next news piece?
Yeah, so UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak discusses price caps for basic necessities. So yeah, I only just found out about this morning. I hadn't heard about this, but this is actually something that some people have been trying to push for over here as well. So yeah, so basically the UK government is talking about introducing a cap to so for things that are, you know, considered like basic food items or whatever, because the price has been going up so much on basics. Like, yeah, they say food prices rose by 19.1% in the year to April. So that's the second highest rate in 45 years, they say. So, you know, they're considering maybe some kind of like some limitation on the price of basic goods. Downing Street sources have stressed that there are no plans for a mandatory price cap. So yeah, so that's interesting, you know, like whether it's like a suggested price for basic goods or what, you know. But yeah, yeah, so yeah, actually no, it discusses further on. It's a voluntary so you get the supermarkets can voluntarily sign up to this agreement that would be like, okay, cool, well, you know, like basic goods are going to be this price, which I guess would be like, you know, like
I mean, I think it's important to understand the like in the UK we have like 5 or 6 chains of supermarkets that are really clearly class delineated and have such huge price gaps between them. Because of the illusion that like the upper class ones give some kind of better product, when it's like, you know, it's a lot of it's like, for example, milk from the exact same dairies, but if it's got like a Waitrose label on it, then it must cost 3 times as much. So I think that like I'm not saying any of that in the defense of it not being a mandatory price cap, but I think that's probably their reasoning, is that they need to allow Waitrose to carry on like selling to middle class people at 5 times the price, so that the middle class people feel like they're eating nicer bread.
But isn't the point of a price cap that it's like not an optional thing? Like,
yeah, exactly.
The benefits of a planned economy. Yeah, so it's a little bit different down here because we have a duopoly. So we only have 2 supermarket companies, which both companies kind of own a couple different supermarkets. So there's like maybe 4 or 5 different supermarket kind of brands, but they're all actually the same 2 companies, and they kind of just they've been referred to as a cartel, fixing prices, gouging prices during the lockdowns and stuff, like which nice. Yeah, watching the price increases, like the inflation, well, allegedly according to inflation, but it's all being investigated at the moment. It's
but actually due to like, Pete Buttigieg.
Yeah.
The Kiwi Pete Buttigieg.
Yeah, totally. Like it actually is. And so yeah, they've been talking about something like, well, some people have been talking about something like this, but I honestly, I think the best combat for this kind of thing, I always think, is an actual nationalized supermarket, right? You know, like to force them to compete instead of being like, okay, you can opt into something like this. It's like, no, a nationalized one that sets the price and everyone else has to compete with them. Same with like, you know, gas stations, all that kind of stuff. And then you just nationalize everything.
Yeah, it was something that Corbyn was talking about, a national food service. And it was like, yeah, this seems like a really obviously good thing to have.
Yeah.
But we can't let Commie Corbyn flush the Britain down the 70s tubes. There was a billboard put up by the brand Pimlico Plumbers. If anyone's ever looking for a plumber, I know I'm talking to our audience and they're like, we're probably not like homeowners as a group, but like if you're ever looking for a plumber, Pimlico Plumbers is like one of the largest plumber orgs in the country. Yeah. And they're all Tory scum, so never hire one.
Also, if you're looking for a plumber, which means you own a home, you should definitely become a patron. So,
yes, extremely true.
Patreon.com/red_planet.
Please put off replacing your boiler. It'll be really expensive and annoying, and all you get is like boring hot water or whatever. You get stickers with us, and it's way cheaper.
And you're a good person. You're like a certified good person. So
yeah, it helps in some way. It's kind of interesting in the context of Sunak's politics, because he has come in as a I've been saying this for a while, like a very naive neoliberal. And it's always interesting to see how quickly neoliberals learn the lesson that like neoliberalism is a completely nonsense ideology and has nothing to do with like economic science. Because basically, like, if a neoliberal comes in at a time when things are relatively good and stable, they'll start doing all the free market bullshit as much as they possibly can. And then when they hit a crisis, they're going to learn that like neoliberal economics have no answers for that, like no answers whatsoever. And then the two choices are more police or socialist policies, and those are the only two options then. Sunak's been doing plenty of more police, just to be clear, but it's interesting to see that he's already like considering something like this.
Yeah. Well, so the Simon Roberts, the boss of Sainsbury's, has denied that his supermarket has been profiteering, which is exactly what all the supermarkets down here that have been profiteering have said too. Cool. Coincidence, like like they just say like, oh, it's just we're just setting prices to keep in line with the market and all this kind of stuff like that.
We're all
it's
small little beans. Ooh.
Yeah, my brother in Christ, you control the market.
Yeah. There are two identical guards in front of the doors. One always tells the truth and the other is a capitalist.
Yeah. Like, and with us, our duopoly is kind of like, it's kind of like, it's if they are working together as a cartel, which it has been alleged, and there's good evidence to show that, then it's like, it's really just a monopoly. It's like, you control it all. But so with the inflation going up and stuff, obviously everything's getting more expensive for everyone. And there was, so what they were saying here is that the experts have warned that expensive food is set to overtake energy bills as the epicenter of the cost of living crisis. So we've been talking about that, like energy costs in so many places has been a real catalyst for big protests, all that kind of stuff. And so many of the countries that we've done little like news pieces on Red Planet in the past. But it's kind of like this thing where it's like all of these things together just add up to being, it's like the prices are increasing so much that it's like you're just like everything in general is getting way more expensive, to the point where it's like, like we've talked about this before, how inflation goes up, prices go up, everything like that, but wages don't go up, anything like that. It's like, like it's even just to survive is getting far more expensive. But it's like, through protesting, through striking, these are like, we can't, it's very hard to prove that like a supermarket is like fixing prices, or is because you just go talk to them, you go ask them like they did, and they said no we're not, but like, so the only way that people can really kind of do anything about this is through like through collective action, through striking, protesting, getting even in their own industries, getting for better wages and all this kind of stuff, or even just, for the government to investigate things like protests like that. So it's kind of like, that's why we see so many big protests. That's why, we've covered so many in places where it's like, it's food prices, it's energy prices and everything. I know that seems like a really basic observation, but
I think it's really, really worthwhile.
Yeah. That's why I kind of like just kind of spelling these things out in case there's anyone kind of new to the stream or anything like that.
No, I think it's really important. Like, we got feedback from Nat's mom the other week that was like, they seem to be having a good time, but I don't understand a lot of it.
Me too, Nat's mom.
The one thing I'd say about this is, like, premise of the show is that as material conditions are worsening due to the knock-on effects of climate change, shit's going to kick off, capitalism is going, we're going to get something else, hopefully communism. And like, I would say that it's really important to take a news article like this and say, when we say that material conditions part at the start, these are the material conditions. This is it. You can't afford fuel, you can't afford food, you can't afford, and your wages aren't increasing. That's a margin which is going to squeeze to zero for a lot of people really rapidly. which might tie into what we're talking about today. Who knows?
Yeah, and yeah, even like the fuel stuff is interesting because so in a lot of the countries that we've seen big kind of uprisings kick off recently, it's the price of fuel also ties into the price of power because a lot of the power stations run on fuel and all this kind of stuff. So it's kind of like this knock-on effect of when one gets more expensive, it's it makes the other more expensive, which with power, when they're using less fuel to cut back on, it increases the scarcity, which drives up the price as well, and it kind of like has this exponential effect.
Yeah, I think it's worth saying, like, that exponential effect though. You said food is gonna, like, this one person said that food may overtake fuel as the epicenter of the cost of living crisis, and I think it's really important to think of like direct and indirect effects. Like, if you have what's it called, the coefficient in maths, right? There's when this quantity changes, this one changes by this much, right? They have some kind of relationship to each other, and it can be different than linear, right? But my point is that if the price of food were only increasing because the price of fuel were increasing, and that affects transport costs and some growing costs, right? Then food couldn't overtake fuel as the epicenter, right? It has to be there are other things going on. And it's like the things that are going on can actually all be boiled down to two things: climate change and capitalism. Because capitalism, and you could boil those down to just capitalism, really. But climate change's effect on how we do agriculture can't be remedied with capitalism. It can only be made way worse. So when you're talking about like this duopoly and stuff, it's exactly like that. When we're talking about having a price cap for basic necessities, but not for Waitrose, it's like that's capitalism, right? And it's so it's just like food could only overtake fuel as the epicenter of the cost of living crisis if there's also shit that's really fucked about food. And it always comes back to capitalism.
Well, Kira, why don't you, speaking of capitalism, tell us a little bit about Tesla and what fun things they've been doing to make life hard for everyone.
our favorite special boy, friend of the show, Elon Musk. Yeah. Our special boy has been doing some more silly things. For instance, Tesla is now trying to cover all their employee complaints by encouraging their workers to discuss them only verbally,
not within range of any recording devices,
right.
Not on the phone, in personal.
Yeah. So, internal documents from Tesla reveal thousands of customer complaints regarding the company's self-driving technology and how the company prioritizes itself over the safety of its customers, which surprises literally no one in our audience right now. 100 gigabytes of Tesla's files, representing over 20,000 documents, were provided to German newspaper Handelsblatt by a whistleblower. I don't know how to say that.
I've opened the notes and the word is Handelsblatt. There you go.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Upon learning of the leak, Tesla threatened legal action against the paper, making accusations of data theft and demanded deletion of the material. Within the documents are nearly 4,000 complaints submitted between 2015 and 2022. Issues included sudden, unexpected acceleration and braking.
Yay.
As well as failures with the system's crash detection functions. And then the documents also show how Tesla's customer service was told to communicate with customers regarding these issues. Technical notes relating to the complaints commonly included instructions not to share information with customers, or in some cases, to only do so verbally. And the customers that spoke with this newspaper, the German newspaper Handelsblatt, corroborated this, noting that the company rarely issued information in writing. Oh, our sweet special boys up to it again.
I'm just imagining having a complaint about the famously shitty, dangerous, and racist workplace at Tesla factories, and then my manager is like, "Hang on, the cars can record us. We have to go outside."
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And then going into the car park and him being like, "No, we need to keep going."
Yeah. Another car park.
That's amazing. Yeah, that's incredible that they're so it's such an interesting. I don't want to say it's an interesting company, but like, because of the technology and because of how oppressive this company is, you have all these complaints being just not recorded in certain ways to maintain their like irrelevance, essentially. But then you also have the actual cars that do record all in the car and around the car, to the point where it was revealed that Tesla like has access to tons of footage of like its customers. Like they said they saw footage of the Tesla like owners' children, or like they saw like footage of their owner like having sex with people, like, and all this footage is available to like the actual employees to just go through and to just do whatever they want with. So you have that side of it, and then you have the other side, which is like never record any of these complaints anywhere.
Yeah, I've seen them use the footage as well in like insurance kind of cases and stuff, where it's like, with the self-driving thing, where it's like you're supposed to have your hands within like certain places or whatever while it's driving, so that you could instantly take over if it's gonna just hit a small child or something like that. And then them using the video footage to be like, oh well, actually your hands were just outside of the hand zone. Just like dumb shit like that. So it's like, you obviously have like, you can like, you have a great amount of data there that you can go through. It's like, yeah, I mean, like just having them having access to that is like just wild,
Self-driving, self-sabotaging, self-surveilling car.
I just want to also say just quickly, in case anyone's ever considering a Tesla for whatever reason, if any of you have disposable income like that, first of all, become a patron. Patreon.com/red_planet.
Tesla is a car as a service anyway. You could just give whatever money you would be paying them every month to us instead.
Right. But also just know that the video used, this famous video used to show Tesla's car's self-driving capabilities was actually pre-mapped. It was actually a pre-mapped route. And then they just showed the car driving a pre-mapped route. And then when it parallel parks, they had to shoot that over and over again, finally until it got it right, because it kept hitting all the other cars in the parking lot. So just know that before you make a decision.
One of my favorites was like a video that a dude uploaded himself of how good his Tesla was self-driving through
Did he do the thing where he
park.
keeps like apologizing while he's like, oh, that never happens, oh, it's fine?
Guys who own Teslas are really used to the phrase, this never happens.
Yeah. So he was saying that the only danger was the other people, the other drivers. And so he's letting it drive around the car park, and people keep going to pull out and almost getting him. There's like a kid that walks in front of it and stuff.
That dangerous child trying to cross the street.
No, but as he's leaving the car park, you can see that he's been driving around like the wrong way around the car park. Like the arrow thing is going the opposite way. It's just like, yeah, we fucking go. And he didn't realize this. He just unloaded it or whatever like that. And then, the first thing is everyone on Twitter just being like, you fucking...
average blue check behavior.
Yeah. Like you just, oh my God. But aside from that, it's like, like these are the, like, what is it? There was that video of the Cybertruck that was supposed to be like impervious, like, like the smash proof screens or whatever. And then, Elon and the designer like threw the ball at the screen, and it just at the window, and it just immediately. Yeah.
It's my blue sky banner, by the way. It's just a picture of Elon standing in front of his Cybertruck with its shadow, with the cracked windows, just looking really embarrassed.
You can't even keep it under you can't even keep things together for like one display. You'd think that if there was really like a risk, you would have like put in some, like it wouldn't have been a real Cybertruck. You would have put in some kind of like other secret shielded windows or something like that. But it's like you don't even you don't even know what could go wrong. You don't even have any kind of like sense of what's going on here or whatever. It's like, it's wild. Like he's not even like clever enough to be more dubious about it.
We've been having some pretty miserable news so far on the show today, I think. So how about a happy story? Would you like to hear a happy story? It's about a sweet old man celebrating his 100th birthday.
Oh, that's so precious. So
the headline here is Henry Kissinger celebrates 100th birthday. World breathes a sour sigh of disappointment. Henry Kissinger, US statesman and evil ghoul, turned 100 years old this week, and I wanted to give him a little special birthday celebration by reading some of his achievements in his long career on the show. Kissinger was responsible for many of the most disgusting plays of American imperialism in his lifetime so far, including the carpet bombing of Cambodia, the systematic bombing over an area without any plan based on military targets. They literally just selected an area and said, bombs this far apart throughout this whole region, which has no confirmed total death toll. Well done, Henry.
Carpet bombing is like
Always a good sign.
disgusting. Well, one of the most disgusting things you can do, because it's like literally like the idea is to like like what Soph was saying, like plotting out a distance between each bomb so that the areas of destruction, the areas of effect, kind of all just line up. So
you had to make it a gamer term.
Exactly. It's like
Henry Kissinger used his alt.
To completely like carpet in an area in bombs, so it's just like everything within that zone is just completely gone.
It's absolutely devastating to the entire region, and he did it across just a huge amount of Cambodia's entire landmass. Like
like gone. This guy is just like the ghoulish, most ghoulish ghoul that you can imagine. Like
I think that food critic Anthony Bourdain described the situation in Cambodia well in this quote. Once you've been to Cambodia, you'll never stop wanting to beat Henry Kissinger to death with your bare hands. You'll never again be able to open a newspaper and read about that treacherous, prevaricating, murderous scumbag sitting down for a nice chat with Charlie Rose or attending some black tie affair for a new glossy magazine without choking. Witness what Henry did in Cambodia, the fruits of his genius for statesmanship, and you will never understand why he's not sitting in the dock at The Hague next to Milosevic. While Henry continues to nibble nori rolls at Ramaki and A-list parties, Cambodia, the neutral nation he secretly and illegally bombed, invaded, and undermined, and then threw to the dogs, is still trying to raise itself up on its one remaining leg. R.I.P. King, Anthony Bourdain. I have so many more war crimes to read off, though. So he organized the massacres of millions across Vietnam, Cambodia, and Laos under Nixon. Buckle in for some more. I know people are more aware of that region, right? So there's more.
But I like how it's just one sentence and he massacred millions. Next. That's what we're talking. That's the level of scum we're talking about.
And that's just point one as well. Anyone here heard of Chile? Anyone here heard of General Pinochet? Because he was heavily involved in the coup against Allende in Chile, which was both responsible for the mass torture, brutalization, rape, and murder of untold numbers of Chilean citizens, and also seen as the first great victory of the new neoliberal order. So fucking cool. What a cool guy.
They say like a lot, like Chile is where neoliberalism was born, and it's like this was the bloody birth of neoliberalism and kind of what they killed to create it, so fucking here we go.
It's also noteworthy that like the Western imperialist powers view of Chile was so much about like just literally a lab for them to play with. Like they just thought of it as like literally like we can just see what, and when I say like Western imperialist powers, it can also be like narrowed down to just a fucking few guys, because like the Chicago school under Milton Friedman, like people Milton Friedman taught, and he was seen as like a crank who was like, we can just deregulate everything, it'll work out perfectly, and everyone was like, that is utterly insane. And then like capitalists realized how much money they could make off that situation if that was government policy instead of promoting him. And then like guys he taught were General Pinochet's direct economic advisors, because I'm so early in the list of war crimes though. The Pakistani dictator Yahya Khan was aided by Kissinger in the Bangladesh Liberation War, making Kissinger responsible for the deaths of between 300,000 and 3 million more people. The Bangladesh Liberation War was a fight for Bangladeshi independence, and generally horrible affair. East Timor, first liberated from Portugal by local socialists, was invaded by the Indonesian dictator Suharto, propped up and armed by Henry Kissinger only a month after they declared independence, because Western powers were worried about there being a communist nation in the area. Over 200,000 Timorese were killed in massacres and organized starvation as a result.
It's so infuriating, because when you're talking to people about communism and they're like, well, where has it ever worked? It's like, do you know anything about anything? Please.
It feels played out to say the thing about like, it's been kneecapped by American imperialism everywhere, that like people, local people decide this is the way we want to organize ourselves. But like, when you read about the actual history of how brutal and horrifying it was, what they did, it's a different game entirely. Last war crime. Over 30,000 people were disappeared, brutalized, and tortured in Argentina by a military junta Kissinger approved in 1976. So what an incredible career for Henry Kissinger, being interviewed in The Economist just this week. Kissinger's life may be one of the most perfect examples of how easily white people in the imperial core can be led to believe that someone is a great statesman and hero by doing to brown people far away what they would find repulsive if it were done to white Europeans or Americans. I think that we don't usually think about the social dynamics of the imperial core and the imperial periphery because, like, by the geographic nature of imperialism, right? It's like mostly these aren't groups who are interacting because, like, the imperial periphery has been ghettoized by militarized borders. But, like, there is a social dynamic here, and you can see it really clearly with Henry Kissinger as an example, because, like, if he did this to white people, he would be understood by everyone as one of history's greatest monsters instead of just like everyone minus liberals, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, that's like what Bourdain was saying, right? Like, you know, like
exactly,
he should be in the Hague next to Milosevic and stuff.
Right.
You know, it's like
exactly.
no, because these people don't, you know, they don't look like Americans, so they don't count or whatever.
You can also see the huge divide in the way that people will treat Ukrainians versus, say, Palestinians or any other group of non-white people.
Yemeni people who are being brutalized and murdered because of like weapons that the Britain is selling them, you know. Well, that's the last note of our the final note of our happy story for this week. I just want to say happy 100th birthday, Henry. May it be your last, and may humans around the world spit at your memory for 100 years more. Tim, do you want to tell us about the weather?
Yeah, so the strongest storm on the planet in 2 years is passing north of Guam at the moment. The super typhoon, I think they're calling it. Yeah, super typhoon Mawar strengthens into most powerful storm on Earth in more than 2 years. So yeah, it's a Category 4 storm passed through just north of Guam on this week, Wednesday. And so it's building up force still as well, you know, so it's like it's the most powerful storm on the planet, but it's getting worse. It's like so far. And yes, one of the strongest storms in the world since the year 2000. And so while it is just, you know, like it's a weather event, things happen like this, like all the random forces of the world or whatever, this is a pattern, right? You know, like we're seeing this more and more. I mean, we've been seeing it a lot down here. The weather like especially this year more than others has been like just one weather event after another. We've had, you know, floods and like just super strong winds and everything like that, and it's just like this is happening more and more all over the world. Obviously there is some kind of there's something going on that's affecting them.
You think?
That's, you know, that is perhaps changing the climate.
Well, we don't want to necessarily point fingers. So yeah, let's just describe what the thing that's happening is. Seems like the climate is changing, right?
Yeah. It seems like there has been a change in the climate and that it may continue to do so.
We're all looking for the class in society who did this.
Yeah. It was like winds up to 165 miles per hour. The picture of it is like pretty incredible. You can see it up on the screen now. It's you just like this huge big round eye.
This is the spooky weather with Tim.
Yeah, the spooky weather. This is the weather in Night Vale. There's been typhoon warnings for the entire area and stuff. Yeah, and it's they're worried that it's going to get a lot stronger. Gusts have been pegged up to 215 miles per hour, which is like pretty wild. That's pretty strong winds. So yeah, so since 1979, only 13 other typhoons have reached 185 miles per hour strength. Pretty wild. It's obviously these kind of things are due to air pressure, so we get you know, like the cold and the hot air mixing together, spinning around a big circle or whatever. The temperature of the air and wind, obviously, you know, like this is the thing. Like someone said the other day that they had no idea where wind came from, and it blew their mind. I saw someone saying on Twitter that they always thought it was the gravity of the moon moving the waves which pushes the air that creates wind, but it's not. It's high and low air pressure from like hot and cold air. And yeah, obviously when they hit, they do things, they push away, and then they create big gusts and stuff like that. So with the climate that is changing, gets hotter, the sea, the surface temperature of the sea heats up, creates hot air.
Everyone take notes? Take notes, everyone. There will be a quiz, maybe.
Yeah. So we're going to see a lot more. This is obviously a lot more kind of climate change related things that feed into these events. But yeah, that's the most basic just of things. So yeah, so there's a potential for Moa, the typhoon, to stay pretty strong for a while. They have like current ideas of where it's heading. They think it's going to be getting pretty rainy over in Taiwan soon. Like they're expecting it to be bad, but then there's a potential that it gets really, really bad. So they're kind of keeping an eye on it all throughout Asia at the moment. But yeah, there's not too many. Normally they'd say like, oh yeah, it's going to come this way, and then it's going to hit like this other pressure bar and it's going to chill out or blah, 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 whatever. But they're saying at the moment there's nothing really stopping it. Like there's nothing standing in the way of Moa from just getting a lot worse and getting a lot bigger before it peters out. So yeah, hopefully if anyone is watching from Guam or possibly in Taiwan, or even I think it's going to pass relatively close to Japan as well. I hope they I don't know, have a raincoat, I guess. Kira, what is happening over in the Netherlands?
Well, thank you, Tim. Speaking of horrific things that are happening due to climate change, in the Netherlands, over 1,500 climate activists were arrested. This is part of the Extinction Rebellion climate group. Activists were blocking a section of the motorway in the center of the city on Saturday. It was a protest against Dutch fossil fuel subsidies, which, by the way, is a form of nonviolent protest. But, what do we expect from police when a bunch of nonviolent protesters try to protest the continued dumping of fossil fuel emissions into our climate? They react with violence. So police use the water cannon to disperse and harm activists blocking the major road. And they arrested 1,579 people, 40 of whom will be arrested and on charges that include vandalism. But here's a little fun fact. There was a few celebrities there, a few Dutch celebrities, and one of them was the woman who played Melisandre from Game of Thrones. I don't know how to pronounce that, by the way. It was Carice van Houten, so based. Awesome. Base queen. She was arrested, but then later allowed to return home. So I wonder if they're like, oh no, we can't actually fuck with you because you're too famous. Who knows?
Yeah, no, that's like legitimately a thing, right? Like, yeah, it's like they're not gonna put the fire witch lady in the cells or whatever,
No, because then it's gonna cause way too much focus on this absurdity.
Then she might have to do a spell. She might have to like have a weird shadow baby with the blood of a king, and
use the leeches on the guy's ding dong or whatever. Yeah,
do some of that stuff.
I forgot that Tim's a sword guy, and this is probably like a big deal for him.
I feel like I could probably say this for practically any European nation, but I think there's a reputation of like Holland being kind of twee and chill, and like it's got Amsterdam, you go and smoke weed and take mushrooms there or whatever, and windmills and clogs, but like ACAB is ACAB everywhere. The European cops as a general set like fucking suck. But I remember like that squatting book I'm always talking about, The Autonomous City. Like the opening bit of that is like Dutch cops using the counterterrorism unit to just evict some squatters from like a place they were chilling in and using it as like a youth center.
Just want to close this story by saying as Tim mentioned the previous story, and as a lot of you probably know from, just observations of the world and what climate change is doing, climate change is extraordinarily violent, right? This is like what Sophie was talking about before. It is like the threat to all life on the entire planet. And it's something that we could stop, but it's not stopping because the ruling class refuses to stop, right? So this is an extraordinarily violent act. And blocking a motorway is nonviolent, especially in the face of this enormous violence. So the police reacting violently towards nonviolent protests of like the looming threat to all life on the planet is just, I just want to point out that extraordinary contrast. And also to, in case anyone was ever weakening on their hatred of cops, there it is. Hate the cops, hate the capitalists. Note that police exist to protect capital. And that once again, we're seeing that the state exists to mediate class tensions in favor of the ruling class.
There you go. That's the one. It's like they're on the side of climate change. It's like as if it's like as if climate change is caused by a thing that they also defend, and then they're directly carrying out like the whims of the destruction of the planet, as if it's like we're facing a fucking Thanos or some shit. It's like there's this actual world-ending fucking villain, and all of the other bad guys just like lining up in coalition.
They're just
like people who are anti-abortion and people who are anti-LGBT, and like the cops and the state are just like, no, we love climate change. Actually, we all want to die.
Speaking of anti-queer dipshits, Sophie, what's going on in London?
Right. It's counter demo weekend. This happens once a month. Turning Point UK show up outside the Honor Oak pub in South London, and then the next day Posey Parker holds a little fasci rally in Hyde Park. It keeps on happening. It's pretty regular thing now, about once a month, the Saturday and the Sunday. And generally what happens is and this has been happening for the last few months now, like a few hundred people show up and massively outnumber Turning Point UK at the Honor Oak pub and tell them to get fucked. That one's been getting, the basic trajectory of it is like that one's been getting better and better for our side, which is to say the side of people who just want people to live and just like chill. To the point where this weekend, yesterday, at the Honor Oak, their speakers didn't even show up. The fascist speakers who had been like preparing for it just didn't show up at all. And as usual, a ton of the local community, anti-fascist blocks and queer demonstrators showed up in solidarity with the Honor Oak and the drag queen event that's being held there. And yeah, it's just an utter embarrassment for them. The other demo, Posey Parker's one, is a weird one that goes back and forth. It's been, I wouldn't say it's like diminishing numbers on our side. I would say like there's an escalation of both sides. Both sides have been getting bigger, and also their side has been getting a lot more aggressive, which means a lot of other people are showing up, preparing to like for the possibility that a fascist is going to attack them. So yeah, I wouldn't say it's like one is getting better and one is getting worse. I would say it's one is getting better and the other one is continually frustrated by cis people not showing up to support us. Anyway, far-right org Turning Point UK attempted to disrupt a family-friendly drag event at the Honor Oak pub in South London, as they've been doing every month. It's been reported between 20 and 40 members of the right-wing hate group were met on the street by around 100 queer people and allies who successfully repelled the group in what has been referred to as a joyful, righteous street party. Yeah, I saw some of the aftermath pictures as well. Like people have been drawing on the ground in chalk. Someone made like a little hopscotch grid and stuff. Like people are just chilling. They should bring grills to the next one. They should just actually fully have a street party. That'd be awesome. There were no arrests. Honor Oak Pub's drag queen storytime event went ahead without further incident. Meanwhile, no. Actually, I know meanwhile and I know erstwhile, but I don't know the one for when it's in the future. Soup Woman, Posey Parker, was also scheduled to lead a Let Women Speak fascist temper tantrum in Hyde Park the following day. And yeah, that's been today. It's been a bit of a back and forth. So 3 people were arrested today in Hyde Park. Currently, people are waiting on arrestee support outside the stations so that when they're released, because obviously people don't bring a ton of stuff to protests. So then when you're held for like possibly a full day or whatever, you're then chucked out on the street, you're exhausted, you don't have any of your stuff. So people are doing arrestee support right now, and we'll meet them when they're let go. Or at least that's what's happening on our side. So what happened was Ben Lawrence, who is the founder of Patriots of Britain, a Nazi org, go figure, attended both of these demos on the fascist side. And there's a video. It doesn't show exactly what happens, but it's like I think it would be reasonable to look at the footage and conclude that since he was behind our line, like there's the two sides of it with cops in between, right? And this Nazi went behind to the other side to start trying to agitate people and was clearly walking around like looking for a fight. Yeah, so there's a brief scuffle with someone who's holding up a flag, by the looks of things, holding it up in his face to try and get him to like fuck off. And then they dip out of camera for a second, and then there's a scuffle between them. I just know where I would put my money between like some random trans protester and a Nazi skinhead on who starts a fight. But the two of them collided into a third person, and that's how 3 people got arrested, because when the police swarmed in, they just grabbed all 3 of those people, including the person who was just standing there. And yeah, so like I say, there are 2 arrestees on our side right now, and there are comrades waiting to get them when they come out. So Godspeed for their release. And ACAB, basically ACAB. There was a minor funny thing that happened on Twitter where the GCs were trying to claim that Ben Lawrence was a trans rights activist. I think probably because he wore a football shirt that's got pink and blue on it, maybe. But it's like, you look at a picture of the guy, he looks like Kadyrov, that like Russian general who's especially proud of murdering gay people. Like he has like every possible element of like fashy skinhead piece of shit. And like the gender criticals being like, it's a trans rights activist. This is someone who's just trying to find an excuse to be a misogynist. And I'm like, I do think he's probably a misogynist. Most Nazis are, but I'm just looking at this guy and I'm immediately like, nah, that's a Nazi though. So
yeah, there was a bunch of that with the Posie Parker rallies in Australia and also over here, where they tried to like paint, like anyone that was like violent or whatever as like a TRA, a trans rights activist or whatever. But it's like, these are people that are very public. Like, these are known people like that, like that have been like very vocal. These are people that are like, like they have a history of doing far right shit. They're on camera, on record, saying and doing all these kind of things and stuff. Like, it's very obvious that they're not like, it's like, we know which team these guys are on, right? Like, yeah. It's very much like grasping at straws from them. Or, it's like that idea where it's like everything is a conspiracy against them, and it's like that's the only way they can reconcile what's happening.
Yeah, I saw them doing some conspiracy thinking about the Nazis who were like Zeke Heiling and had swastikas on them at the Australia demo, like saying that the Nazis had shown up to disrupt and to make their side look bad and confuse things. And it's like, they're on your side though. And so when people show up and they stand next to you and you find everything about them abhorrent, you like move away from them and you say, fuck you.
You don't shake their hand, give them high fives.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what? I'm excited to see the next turf rally that's against Nazis explicitly. Like they have all these like anti-trans rallies, but I've yet to see, and I'm very excited for it. It sounds like they hate them, right? So I can't
Nazis
wait to
are
see.
Enemies of women is the thing. Like, everyone knows Nazis fucking hate women. If any TERFs actually would care to make arguments against that statement, feel free. I just feel like you'll be being more honest about your beliefs.
I just would like to see them demonstrate against Nazis. I just have yet to see any of that. Yeah, any day now. Yeah. Anyways, I guess we have our last story. So 200,000 Palestinian families are due to lose UN food assistance. So on May 11th, the UN World, what is it? WTF stands for the World Food, World Food Program, my apologies. The WFP, the World Food Program of the UN, announced in a statement that 200,000 families, or 60% of the people the agency assists in Palestine, will no longer be receiving food assistance due to a severe funding shortage. By August, by August, the World Food Program will be forced to completely suspend operations in the West Bank and Gaza if no funding is received. It literally only needs $51 million to keep funding its operations, which, by the way, is not a lot. But I was thinking about reading a testimony from somebody in Gaza about this. Yeah, so Sama al-Kanu is in northern Gaza Strip, and she's still coming to terms with the shocking message she received, informing her that her monthly food voucher has been cut off. She says, "I've been receiving this voucher for 10 years. It relieved me of the burden of providing basic food every month." She's 45, lives with her 66-year-old husband who is sick, and
Jesus
4 children.
Christ.
She says she waits impatiently for the coupon worth about $75 to come in at the start of every month. She goes early in the morning to cash it at the supermarket next to her house. And that she said receiving the letter that was going to get cut off, was a day of mourning for me. She spent the entire day crying and her blood pressure spiked. And she said, "At least with a voucher, I had the minimum basic needs covered in my house." And she's pointing to a barrel of flour that is about to run out. "What should I do today? How shall I feed my family? Sometimes I think it would be better off if we all died." Sorry for the bummer story, but this sucks super hard. Like, obviously, Palestinians are massively suffering under occupation by Israeli settlers for the multitude of, and we've discussed this so many times in the stream, but I think we all understand. And this is just severely disgusting that they would further be trapped, like especially in Gaza, in an open air prison, and unable to now even receive the meager food vouchers that they need in order to feed themselves and their families. And to compare, to date, Israel has received $260 billion from the United States government alone, the vast, vast majority, which has gone to military assistance and missile defense. This year alone, the State Department, U.S. State Department, has given Israel $3.8 billion to fund their military missile defense program, purely 100% just for that. So again, compare, Palestinians will starve. They're already food insecure. Many of them are starving at the moment, but even more so. And the UN needs only $51 million to keep funding this operation. And then compare that to what settlers in Israel are receiving just from the U.S. Department, or the U.S. government alone. Yeah, for quote unquote defense. Yeah. The quote unquote defense program. Mm-hmm.
Anyways, from the people relying on the food vouchers that are getting cut off. Yeah.
Solidarity with our Palestinian comrades.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Sorry for the bummer story.
Yeah.
No, sometimes the news sucks. So, but you know what doesn't suck? Summer. Summer is just beginning, which means the summer heat waves are just around the corner. Yay! I made it sad again.
Before we get into that, maybe we should talk about our Patreon.
You know what? There's never a bad time to talk about patreon.com/red_planet. There are various different tiers. We don't have to do them all right now, but there are so many tiers you can subscribe at. You can give us a varied amount of money.
As little as $2 a month, American dollars, if you want to support us, and we would really appreciate it. If you like the program so far, you enjoy our witty banter and chemistry, but also covering really important events that especially you don't see covered anywhere else, which I don't see people talking about imperial periphery struggles very often. So I'm very proud that we're a group that does. And if you want to continue,
for that matter, even in our sphere, I don't see people talking this much about the cost of living crisis. Honestly, I see a lot of people talking about like Biden's re-election or whatever, and I'm like, the people are starving.
Yeah.
Patreon.com/red_planet. We really appreciate each and every one of our patrons. And like I said, it's only as low as $2 a month, but there are other tiers if you can provide more. And so, let's just jump into the main topic.
Yeah, summer is just beginning, which means the summer heat waves are just around the corner. Yay, it's a cheerful and happy episode for everyone. Everybody knows that each summer is now going to be hotter than the last. Everybody knows that it's because of climate change, and everybody understands the implications. Things are going to start falling apart more and more until the systems that are killing the planet are brought to a halt. We figured it was a good point in the year to pause and have a discussion about these implications. So this week on Red Planet, we're in the Hothouse having some discussions for a summer that will always be hotter than the last. Yay! Climate change! It's like I'm still writing my script, even when I'm not writing my script. So yeah, the first big topic I wanted to talk about today was homelessness and refugees and immigrants, because I think like the broad umbrella like displaced people is probably like a really good place to start talking about the direct effects of climate change on our lives from two angles, right? Which is like people who are already displaced or have found themselves displaced already, like like people who don't have shelter are going to be struck really badly by all of the extreme weather events. Like a pretty basic idea that the having a roof over your head protects you from the weather. But also like it's going to be driven by climate change as well. It's already been, I think people have pointed out, like the civil war in Syria drove a lot of the what was the evolving migrant crisis in Europe, and a lot of people have said that like climate change is a big factor in what caused the civil war in Syria to begin. But like there are already direct climate refugees from places that have been flooded or places that are like experiencing like constant drought or whatever. And I think that like it's really clear to see that people are being displaced. There's external displacement when people are going to be like trying to cross borders because like the entire region of where they are to begin with is fucked. There's also going to be internal displacement, like because climate change will continue to cause housing crises, like directly and indirectly. Like if you're talking about within the imperial core, there's plenty of places across America, like more land disappears in Louisiana like faster than anywhere else on the planet. And like, people having their homes flooded are going to be like internal refugees to countries, but what they'll mostly be viewed as is homeless people, right? Like they won't be, it's very likely these people won't even be considered a kind of like their own political class, except for just being people who are homeless. And then like the housing crises that aren't just like caused by an area floods or whatever, or has a devastating storm, but like housing crises because there's a cost of living crisis, because there's a fuel crisis, because there's climate change. That's what I wanted to. That's the discussion.
Yeah, it is pretty well because I think that there's like this kind of idea that a lot of people think about of like a lot of these like very direct effects, like like the actual like loss of land, habitable land and everything like that, to be something that is like this like very far future kind of Mad Max kind of thing. But we've like in the Pacific there have been islands that have been like literally sinking for like decades now. Like Kiribati is like pretty much going to be gone. We've talked about this on stream before, but they've recently started a project where they're kind of mapping out and filming as much of the island as possible to recreate it in virtual reality, so that the kids that are being born now can actually see what their island was like at one point, because they feel that in the near future it's pretty much just going to be gone, which is so
grim.
wild.
That's so grim.
Where do you go? Like someone has to kind of like let them settle somewhere, like they'll end up throughout the Pacific, but I'm guessing like Australia and New Zealand will probably have a lot of Kiribati refugees, which is wild. And that's just the start of it, like because a lot of these smaller islands are kind of some of them are quite high, but a lot of them are quite low lying, so they obviously like will be covered earlier. But but then there's a lot of countries that are gonna start disappearing too. So it's pretty worrying. It's it's something that I think we're gonna start seeing a lot more of.
I mean, the kind of bleaker thought I've had recurring is like, we know that climate activists have been saying, I don't know, the last white rhino or the polar bear might die off or whatever, and it just feels like it's going to shift to a point where people are saying like the last like the last Syrian, like the last people who are like living in the region we consider to be Syria, like, or whatever other place like winds up in like permanent drought, like campaigning on these kinds of terms, like pleading for people within the imperial core to like care and change about it. And like, imagining people's apathy at that point is really horrifying. Like,
it's pretty wild. And I feel like it's something that it's a conversation that has been had in the Pacific for a long time now. Like, I definitely remember these discussions going back years, like since I was a kid. but yeah, it kind of seems like, yeah, it's like one of these things. Like I sometimes do get surprised when talking to people from overseas, and it's really like the first they've heard of it, and it's kind of just like, man, like I remember people have been trying to be so loud about it for so long,
Yeah.
but I don't know, like it's obviously not in.
You telling us about it was definitely the first I'd heard about the
Yeah, exactly. It's obviously not like a failing of individual people in, the Imperial Court or anything like that, but it's just like one of those things where it's like it's against kind of like the capitalist hegemony, like these kind of stories, right? So it's just like they're not getting told the effect of this isn't just, like oceanfront properties and everything like that, like obviously everywhere there's water, there's going to be like rivers, lakes, everything like that affected. And I mean, we've seen a lot of with the climate changing so much and like the increased storms and all that kind of stuff, we're getting a lot more flooded in areas over here that uh like wetlands are getting a lot wetter. So
yeah.
like there's been some pretty bad floods down here. But
Yeah, Britain's gonna be like Florida in the next couple of decades. Like I was talking about primary amoebic meningoencephalitis, which is like a parasite I read about when I was a kid and became absolutely terrified of, because it's like you have no symptoms for like 3 days and then you just fucking die, like all your organs shut down. And I was like, fuck, how do I avoid that? And it's like it lives in these kind of swampy climates where there's like stagnant water and it's really warm. And I'm like, I remember reading about that as a kid and being like, cool, I'm never going to Florida, no worries, all fine.
And then Florida is coming to you.
Florida's coming to me, exactly.
Yeah, but that's an interesting thing that has been happening over here is a lot of these areas that are floodplains that are getting flooded really badly now, or just in recent history, were like historically they're it's like wetlands, so they wouldn't really build anything there. Come to modern time, it is cheap land, so developers buy it cheap, then develop it. They build big subdivisions, big like all these houses. People move into the houses, the floods come, the houses are now inhabitable, and these people don't like have anywhere to go.
I've now heard like two stories from two separate people I know who don't know each other at all about like properties that they know of that like the people managing and selling them or whatever, like know they'll be gone within 30 years time, like that they can't get insurance on this land or they can't get planning permission for this thing or whatever, because like they have been sold this thing, but like it's just gonna be gone.
Yeah that's the other thing in flood affected areas. Like now you can't get insurance there, and in some places you can't, like just with doing like buying anything like that without insurance is just like not even possible. You think, oh, the climate refugees will be from like from Kiribati, from wherever, but it's like, and they could just be from like your own like country, they could just be from different areas.
I'm pretty sure some of my neighborhood is going to be regularly underwater in 10 years time, like not probably properly not habitable, because like it will flood so often.
Yeah. And so it's this thing where it's like, okay, well, there's all these people that don't have houses to live in. They're not allowed to, they can't live in the houses that they've bought, but the houses they've paid all this money for them, or whatever. Some people are trying to get together and get the government to buy them back and redesignate the area as floodplains and all this kind of stuff. But it's like it's a whole thing, and it's like you can't. Where do you live when you're not allowed to live in your area? Like there have been places down here where the government's just been like, okay, the roads aren't safe there anymore, so everyone just has to get up and leave. Like you have to walk out of this area. You can't, you can't carry anything with you or whatever. And it's like, what do you do then when you have to live somewhere? You don't have any money because it's all tied up in this stuff. You can't just buy another house somewhere else. You can't, rent because you don't have any savings or whatever. Like some people can't even work because of whatever. And it's just like, okay, well now you're a person in the Imperial Court that's just, begun to feel what like a refugee feels.
Yeah.
So it's like, it is going to be a lot closer to home for a lot of people than I think they realize.
There's something I think about a lot, which is like, it's probably, it's it's like people building new builds on, well, people, capitalist developers,
Yeah.
building like new build apartments on floodplains, which is happening a bunch here in London. Like, for hundreds of years, people have not expanded London far to the east because it's all floodplains for the Thames out there. And then, like in the last 20 or 30 years, all these developers were like, "Holy shit! Look at all this cheap flat land." And it's just like, what are you doing? And like, so I find it really interesting because, for similar reasons, East London has been famously and historically impoverished. A lot of immigrant communities and communities of Black British people have lived there. But a lot of the stuff they're building now, like it's entirely unaffordable to normal people. So it's like it's for finance perverts. Like a lot of this shit is luxury apartments, so but like the bare minimum of luxury, right? I'm always pointing out that the old critique of like Soviet architecture was like they're just concrete cubes and everyone gets the same thing. And now it's like these new builds they're selling are concrete cubes that they've put like a tile, like a tile brick facade over. It's like what perfect description of late stage capitalism. But like they're making all these houses. They're marketing them directly to like young professionals who work in the finance sector, and then those people are generally going to be people who can relocate if like it gets shitty. So there won't be like as much, let's say, internal climate refugees generated from this. But like I don't know, I just find it to be one of the like most ghostly places, like instances of capitalism, because a lot of construction is done because capitalist developers like need to dispose of surplus capital. Surplus capital is a bizarre idea because of like everyone thinks like if you get capital, you want to hold on to it, but actually like the system needs to keep the money moving for it to matter, and so people have to like move surplus capital, and one way they do that is by turning it into like real estate investments.
Yeah.
And so like they're building houses not because anyone wants them, but because they need to spend the money to build the houses. They're renting them to people who like keep the cogs turning of the same machine that causes this to happen. Those people will be there temporarily until the consequences of the system that they all work on together makes it impossible to live there, and then they'll go somewhere else, presumably just another one of the same soulless new builds on a different floodplain that's not quite as flooded yet. Like, what a bizarre thing.
Yeah. Well, so a lot of the places that got flooded over here were, have been built on floodplains because, obviously developers have bought the cheap and flat land and they've, done all that. But the interesting thing is that a lot of the areas, it was designated as land that you couldn't build on, like that absolutely no one was gonna, like the floodplain said, no, this area is too bad. So the insurance companies and some others and some developers, they kind of like took legal action to get the floodplains altered, the maps altered. It's like they changed the standard of measurement sort of thing. So it's like, okay, this area, it's technically not a floodplain anymore. It's like you haven't actually changed anything. The water will still come to the same level, but it's just not deemed a problem anymore. So it is this like very capitalist thing of being like these two industries, like developers and the insurance.
It's almost like how we treat COVID right now.
Yeah.
Exactly, where it's still horrible and happening and people are still dying in droves, but it's no longer an emergency, so it's just business as usual.
It's more evidence that liberal politicians, if they're like if they're faced with the IPCC saying we have 11 minutes until climate change kills us all, they'll just re-regulate the length of a second.
Yeah, absolutely.
We have 10,000 years, buddy, it's fine.
Yeah. And and even like so many developments are being built, like the same kind of thing, building these cubes. It's like they're building these houses or these like these dwellings, not houses really, that are made to tick the boxes of what a house or like what a dwelling is, so that they can sell it. And because for the most part it's people that are especially down here, it's a speculative market. People aren't buying it to raise a family in or whatever, or they're not building it to sell to families or anything like that. They're building it to sell to investors who are then renting out these like kind of substandard homes that aren't fit for purpose, all that kind of stuff.
local authorities have like quotas that they need to fill for the amount of affordable house. Again, like affordable is something that can be moved around all over the place, but like affordable houses that are being built, which, you know, and broadly just for like the amount of houses being built in general, because it's always, we must always expand. And so like, you know, that's a crucial box that they're ticking, is like, we're building houses for the local council. They need this many more homes.
Yeah, exactly. So we're building these like tiny shitty units in areas that will flood, and it's like, you know, and it's like, even if the people that are buying the houses are living elsewhere, the people that are renting them are, you know, the poor people that are going to be living in the floodplains.
It's like if you were playing Cities Skylines badly on purpose as a joke. Like that's the vibe here. Like you just see this floodplain land and you're like, let's fucking go. I know how I can get enough homes for my population.
Get a good deal on that.
Yeah, and I'll build nothing but luxury apartments, because then I can get the most money off of it, but no one will be able to afford to live there.
It's wild, but it's like, yeah, you know, just like keep bringing this stuff up because it feeds into like how, you know, like a lot of people, when they think about the problems of the climate crisis, they think about like, you know, like pollution and things like that, you know, how it actually directly like materially affects the atmosphere and all this kind of stuff. But it is also like the way that the kind of, you know, like the just kind of like the economic side of things actually affects things, and in so many other ways. Like it's such a deep kind of you know, it's like in every level, like you just do the computer enhanced meme, and every time you get closer you just see more like it's more capitalism. There's more, the criminals were just the bankers all along or whatever, you know, like
oh shit, old man capitalism. There wasn't a ghost haunting this Ferris
exactly
wheel.
yeah, you just take the mask off every time.
So I wanted to say as well about tent cities, which aren't really a phenomenon as much in the UK right now, but like this is something that I'd say, you know, if we're talking about like the summer coming up, a big reason that we're going to be talking about the summer coming up is like heat and more daylight means people are more politically agitated. But like we're also so we're kind of looking at this season coming up as a time when probably much more shit is going to kick off. Like it'll be really interesting to see what happens throughout France, right? But also we're looking forward to future summers and what's going to happen on, you know, the trend of years, right? And I think that like tent cities have grown across the US like year by year, right?
What's a tent city?
It's an area that has been that homeless people have been allowed to congregate in on such mass that they're yeah, I mean it's a tent city, like that people are all living in tents together, and these become extremely stigmatized areas where, like, you know, obviously the police are trying to get rid of them. There almost inevitably comes some kind of push from the local authority to like get the police to evict them en masse. I think that San Francisco has a like famous problem with them, and Seattle as well.
The way you're describing it sounds like it's like a formal space that's where homeless people are allowed to live, but I don't think that's a thing, right?
No, it's not. It's not legislated by the council as come live here. That's fine. It's like it's the fact that it's not already being used, or it's like an area that people like the for whatever reason, like, you know, the police just aren't quick enough, like stopping homeless people for existing in a space, you know, or whatever. It's generally a more neglected part, like part of a whatever, you know, city, where people start to congregate, and then like it's the state of exception. It's a classic place in which like there is a feature that will carry on being there all the time, but it's not part of the local administration's plan. Like they're never thinking, and that'll be the tent city area. They're like, oh shit, how did a tent city happen? And it's like, well, you have a huge homelessness crisis, so maybe that's how a tent city happened. And I think that's something we can kind of anticipate in years coming, right?
Yeah. It's really sad because I used to live in Seattle, and yeah, there's tents like everywhere. If you drive down the highway into the city, all the grass near like that like surrounds, you know, like the hills that surround the highway, it's just like covered in tents, people just living there.
Right. Exactly.
And every once in a while, you'll just see a certain area just cleared out. Like there's these homeless people that were living, God forbid, they were living near some stores. One of them was like this like French bakery that everyone loved. They loved to wait in line forever for their like famous chocolate, whatever.
Right.
overpriced, what have you. But there were homeless people that were living nearby in these tents. I used to, every time I went grocery shopping, I always drive by that area. So I would try to like buy them food every once in a while and like make little like brown bag like lunches to hand out to them, because it like sucks super hard that you're like out here suffering. And then one day they were all gone and the area was fenced off, and there's the signs like no one's allowed to do whatever here or loiter or what have you. And just, that's your progressive city, Seattle. Like far more progressive, I think, in some ways than a lot of cities, but at the end of the day, private property is private property.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's like there are some I think small administrations that like effectively kick homeless populations back and forth like a football. Like they're just there's an area that's kind of near to their boundary between their administrations, and the homeless people are all congregating there, and then it reaches a point and their police clear them all out, and then they go to the next administration over and they congregate there for a while until the police clear them out there. And then there's obviously like what you're saying, where once the police do it, then they fence off the area to be like no one can congregate here anymore.
Mm-hmm.
One thing I wanted to talk about was during winters, people's attempts at mutual aid towards unhoused populations kind of reach a point where this is kind of interesting, right? It's like with the tent city thing we were just saying, that it's not a formal part of the local council plan or whatever, but it's something that keeps on happening and they keep on allowing to happen because ultimately these are people they have let down, and what like the only things they can do with people that their entire system fails is like allow them to break a rule for a while until it gets too much, right? Winter shelters, which we've talked about a little bit on the show before, is a really good example of that as well, where like homeless people have been let down by the system. There's nothing in the system for them, but rather than actually going beyond the system and helping them, local authorities just allow mutual aid projects that are helping them for a short term, but then like they can't let that carry on being a thing, because then people will be building mutual aid and then building parallel power. So we talked about this with the London Mactivists when Alex from the London Mactivists came on the show, that like their squatting activism, basically like every winter they wind up taking some kind of venue and making it into a homeless shelter, because obviously a lot of homeless people don't survive the cold, and like that's basically, it's not that they're left unbothered, but like they get a lot less attention from local councils and from police during the winter, and then as soon as like the weather's warming up again, you can't just let those people just live there. What a crazy idea. That's bad for some reason, and then they kick them out. I think that like, so there's an example going on currently in London, which is the autonomous winter shelter. It might be some of the same folks, but I don't have a confirmation on that. And they're currently facing eviction because like it's gotten far enough away from the winter that the police are like, nah, you have to move on. And I think that like it's probably quite likely that we'll see autonomous summer shelters as well. And I think that that's a point at which like it's going to be really hard for local councils and police to like try to like evict people at any point, because like with the summer heat waves worsening and they'll get longer at the same time, like people should be given some kind of shelter. And it's like the same exact kind of understandable, justifiable rationale that like even though it's not part of their system, they want the homeless people to not die, probably. That like if people set up shelters to shelter people specifically from the heat wave, I don't know. I don't know what would happen then. The most likely thing is that the system would try to recuperate it into itself, right? And be like, this is a homeless shelter we approve of. But like, it's just an interesting prospect to think about for what's going to happen in throughout future summers and years.
There are places like kind of low cost, sort of cheap accommodation that we have down here. I probably have something similar over there, that the government will actually like through like our kind of work and income thing, will like pay the rent of for a homeless person in some circumstances, not always, and it is kind of hard to get into and all this kind of stuff, and they'll pay like the rent or the entirety of the rent or a portion of it, depending on their condition or their circumstances or whatever to live in, but they're like notoriously terrible. And one of them just the other week, a place down in Wellington called Loafers Lodge, burnt down one night, and like a whole bunch of people died because it's just like terrible, like shitty little lodge kind of things. Like this one in particular had, I think it was like up to 90 people in there at a time.
Jesus.
Kind of like a hostel kind of thing, and it's like they are a hostel that you can just go and rent out and stuff, but the government often has like kind of these like emergency housing kind of deals with them and stuff. But like, you know, like these places are so bad that like they have like communal cooking areas that don't work, and I think they think that is maybe to do with like the fire that they had, because a lot of people just have little gas cookers in their rooms and stuff, so it's still basically like people just like, you know, it's like one step removed from actually living on the street. And yeah, this place is like it shouldn't have existed, or not in that state. Like it was just so bad and run down and all this kind of stuff. But the owner's making money from this, you know, like making huge amount of money from not just the inner city real estate, but from, you know, these, you know, the government paying for these rooms and all this kind of stuff. So it's like these things where it's like, okay, there is a form of this where it could be good, but this is the form under capitalism and our shitty neoliberal country and shit like that, where it's like, I wouldn't trust anything set up as like a kind of you know, under the current system, I just wouldn't trust anything the government set up to not immediately just become evil, you know, like
Yeah.
yeah, so it's pretty hard because like, yeah, on one thing it's like you want something to be done, you know, you want there to be some kind of somewhere for people to live and all this kind of stuff, but it's just like in the system that we're in, there's no way that something like this could yeah, could survive in a good form for long. It's like, you know, like this is a systemic issue and not something that we can just kind of, yeah, not something that we can set up.
But I mean, I think that it also is something that we can, as in, you know, ordinary people can. I think it's important for us to focus on that part of this as we have these discussions that are probably going to be like pretty doom and gloom. So maybe we should make sure to wrap them each up with like people can do things.
Yeah. That's one thing that I've seen is like people that work together, grassroots organizations of people that like genuinely care. I've seen do far more than any kind of like government subsidized business kind of thing.
And faster too.
Yeah, faster. Yeah, absolutely. Like it's just, you know, and it's like I think that the model of, yeah, you know, like the kind of like the mutual aid networks and, you know, kind of building dual power and stuff like that. I think that's the, you know, that's the only thing that can really meaningfully address these issues under the current system, you know, like, yeah.
Autonomous shelters, I'm aware of them as a phenomenon in London and in other places in Europe. I don't know about the US or down south or anywhere else, but like certainly, yeah, just speaking from my perspective in London, like the autonomous winter shelter is currently trying to prevent being evicted by the cops and the local council. And they have pages. You can just look up autonomous winter shelter to like, there are ways you can support them that they've talked about. You know, I think that also like, just generally like what Kira was describing earlier, just like people getting food together for homeless people is like really important as well. Like it's obviously just a stopgap solution. But unless someone watching were to decide to like go and squat a venue and open their own autonomous shelter, then that would be illegal. So I can't tell anybody to do that. But some scoundrel, could get together with some friends and break into an abandoned property and turn it into a homeless shelter. Is probably the most direct action I can imagine to deal with the suffering of the unhoused population, right?
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. Like, you know, we've talked about this before. We've talked about squatting. It's like the houses are there, like the shelter is there. When COVID started over here in the first lockdown, our government actually went and got contracts with a bunch of motels and hotels and housed a bunch of people immediately.
We had a quote in the paper here, one of our ministers saying that they wanted homelessness ended by the weekend.
Yeah.
Like, cool, we can just do that. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Yeah, there was also a thing, as like a kind of temporary measure until they figured something out. They took over an entire car park and just like kind of secured it, and like because a lot of people already had their tents and everything like that, and a lot of them actually preferred that. From what I've heard since then, a lot of them because there are people that have been living, you know, sleeping rough, we call it over here, for a long time, and kind of don't like the idea of being inside in rooms and things like that, and they don't necessarily feel safe there. And so a lot of them were like, this is actually like preferable to us to sleep in our tents and our setups in these kind of areas. And it's like, if they really wanted to, they could do something pretty quick, you
Yeah.
know, like it would just take like, I mean, under capitalism it's like, right, it takes an incentive, right? And the like human life and dignity is not an incentive to them, you know.
No, absolutely. Next topic. Let's talk about protesting. There's gonna be more protests. We know this. Because shit's getting more fucked all the time. I feel like sometimes I wonder if we should be like pointing at the stuff that we say is gonna come true. But I feel like we like pointing at it coming true and being like, look. But at the same time, it's also just like the main prediction is just like the material conditions are going to get fucking worse all the time in every conceivable way. And it's kind of like we'd have to point at everything. Like we'd have to point in every direction and be like, yeah, look, it's fucked. Like I already said, like the summer tends to be when shit kicks off, unless it's October. Because the days are longer, the weather's hotter, people generally like feel more agitated, and they also feel more like interested in going outside. And so like when there's a protest in the middle of winter, people are generally like, nah, I'm gonna stay inside. When there's a protest in the middle of summer, you can get tons more people to come out. I was saying just earlier on my stream, I was like wondering about, because of the intensity of heat waves, like when there are like really, really hot days, I wonder whether it'll be more likely that protests are kind of like in the evening or even through the night, because like, you know, just like people can't necessarily be out in the middle of like the midday sun. Protests will be harder for two reasons. Well, there's a third reason, which is like neoliberal governments are always going to respond with like more cops to every single problem. So there'll be more cops, and there'll be worse cops as well. There'll be shittier cops.
Well, that's like a thing, right? All these like problems that we keep bringing up that everyone like talks about and stuff like that. It's like it always just comes back to the solution is to get more cops, because I guess like in the liberal mind or whatever, cops the enforcers of order or whatever, you know. And it's just like, whether it's homelessness, anything like that, it's like, okay, well, we just, you know, these poor underfunded cops, understaffed cops, whatever, we just need more. Like the current system works, we just need more of it,
right? It's like the constant conservative rags that like publish like basically day in day out, like, oh no, cops are quitting because they're not being appreciated enough. And it's like most of the time that you dig into it, like they're trying to fearmonger anyway, and cops aren't really actually quitting in any great numbers. But like there is a steady stream of cops quitting all the time. And like pondering the phenomenon of cops quitting is like, it's a quick way to like joke pill yourself, because it's like, what are the reasons that a cop's gonna quit? Well, when I think through that question, I wind up at the conclusion that like they're going to be replaced by someone really bad. Like the person who will accept the things that the other guy quit for means that if they don't feel like they're paid enough, they don't feel like respected by citizens enough, whatever, like it's going to be someone who's like, I really, really, really want to be a cop, and I don't mind all those things.
Yeah. And I think like it's like this funny thing as well when you hear them talking about why they quit, and they're like, oh, well, it just got really dangerous. It's like,
right.
But then like that's kind of what you signed up for. And also like cops love the idea of being the heroes in the face of the danger. And it's just kind of like, oh wow, so like all this you've been, you know, talking all this time about all the great work that you do in the face of evil or whatever like that, and then when, you know, people actually started kind of like pushing back against you, you quit, like, you know, because you just, you know, like you got to wear the bully badge for a while, and then you know, like, and then it caught up with you, and now it's like, you know, like this is it, like you want to, you know, you want to be the, I don't know, like, you know, like they have this kind of like real crusader mentality, like we're the only thing keeping society together. But you know, like if a pensioner spits at me, I'm quitting immediately, you know. Like,
yeah,
I guess I'm trying to drag them out of their home.
yeah but then you're replaced by the guy who goes sicko mode on the pensioner instead.
Yeah, the guy that's like, fuck, I want to beat the shit out of a pensioner. Like, that pensioner spit at me.
Make my day. Yeah.
Yeah.
But like, it is like there's like the flip side of cops quitting as well, where it's like if it's for understandable reasons, you're like, okay, well then the person who replaces you is gonna be like those reasons don't matter. I really want to be a bully.
Yeah.
But then like there's the other side, which is like sometimes you hear about cops quitting because some like I heard the other day from someone who I care deeply about, but could really do with understanding ACAB better. Like they were like, I know some people who were cops and they quit because like the internal like surveillance that the Met is under now. Like if someone says something like out of line or untoward, and then like the other people that they're around don't immediately report them, like they'll all get in trouble. And I'm like. Right, but like what counts as like something untoward? Because I've seen news stories about like people like officers in the Met who are like making memes about Sarah Everard, the woman that a Met officer like kidnapped and killed. Like, because if you're saying it like one of them has some locker room talk and then like the others don't report him and then they all get in trouble, I'm like, okay, that sounds strict. I don't disagree that that's strict, but I also don't know if I care that much. On the other hand, like if one of them is making a meme about Sarah Everard and shares it, and the others don't report that, I think all of them should be fired. And I don't disagree with that policy at all. Like that's completely legit.
I mean, it's like that just sounds like having to deal with the HR department of any like modern business or anything like that. I mean, if that is like the standard of like, oh, they're quitting because they have to do that, then it's like, well, congratulations, you wouldn't survive in a modern office environment, like go you or whatever.
That's what I mean about it being so doom pilling to consider the notion of cops quitting either way around, because it's either they're quitting for like normal reasons and they'll be replaced by a more fascist guy, or they're quitting for reasons that make you go, Jesus, like they're quitting and you're glad they're going, but the reason they're going makes you go like, Jesus Christ, cops are pieces of shit. Like,
yeah, and unfortunately, a lot of those guys, the ones that are, like shitty cops that leave for the shitty reasons, end up being like prison guards and stuff.
Right, literally.
Some experiences with them, and like, it's wild. And there's pretty. Like, there's been some pretty rough stuff coming out over the last few years, particularly with like the guards in Serco prisons. Serco are like a giant corporation that owns prisons all over the world. And even actually some of the worst stuff I've seen was about the Australian offshore detention facilities for refugees and stuff, where it's like they were just openly, like a lot of openly fascist guards, people that were legitimately going to, and this is like when a bunch of like anti-fascists kind of exposed the kind of telegram groups of a bunch of Australian far right groups or whatever. They had people like recruiting in there, basically being like, I work for this thing where we go there and we basically get to do whatever we want to these people, these refugees that are caged up. And there's like everything from like extreme extreme sexual assaults and sexual crimes and stuff like that, through to just like obviously just like the racism and just violence and just every kind of bad shit. And so these people are in there being like, like that's sick, I'm gonna sign up specifically for those reasons, and there's people there that were like ex-cops, like ex-security guards, all these kind of things, being like, wow, this is a place where like I can fucking flourish. And it's like, and I'm kind of gonna make you think about I mean, like obviously people that are here are probably already thinking about the nature of prisons in that way, but I think if you weren't already thinking about that, I think that's a pretty good indicator about the link.
When we talked to Prisoner Solidarity Network, right, they were saying that like the prison guards union, fucking scum, were like famously had been recruiting from National Front in the 80s and now are recruiting from like EDL or whatever, like same exact stuff.
The exact same thing. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of like, like there's a place, like our society has carved out a place for these people, and they'll find it.
Yeah. The one thing is, cops are going to be shittier and shittier over time. Inevitable decline of the boys in blue. Oh no. And then the other two are like the weather is going to be absolutely fucking punishing in summers when there are more protests, when more people out, and then also everyone's going to be more agitated because it's going to be hotter. So yeah, protests are going to be more dangerous, and I think that's worth people knowing. I don't think it's worth people being deterred from going to protests because like the shit that they're going to be protesting is still going to be really important stuff. But like, you know, one thing I did want to touch on was kettling, because like we talked before, we talked about like protest and riot tactics, how police kettle protesters. Tim, you are a local kettling expert.
I've kind of been like, yeah. Like I've been promoted into that position over the last few years.
Well, Tim has a really, really great video on his channel, on his YouTube channel about kettling. I highly, highly recommend it. And it's not only is it really good, it's also like really visually awesome. Like it's really
it whips.
Pretty. It's like a really pretty video.
Yeah, and we did that episode on protest and riot tactics with Anansi's Library. That was one of our very first episodes where we talked about a lot of that kind of stuff. So yeah, kettling is an old police and military tactic. It goes way back. Like a lot of people kind of trace the name back to like World War II, but it's like a tactic that has gone back even further than that, just in other names. And so the idea is, think about a kettle, you know, like a little pot on the stove with water, and heat is being applied to it, and it makes the water boil on the inside. And so that's basically like, if you can imagine, the water on the inside is the protesters, and the kettle around them is the cops. You know, they're the wall around it, and the idea is to block off all entries and exits, hold the protesters on the inside, and gradually apply pressure. Sometimes they'll just move in slowly, sometimes they'll just sit there, and then the pressure is time. You know, it's like food, water, you know, you being able to use a bathroom, things like that. There's plenty of ways that they can, you know, like apply pressure. Even, yeah, just like literally using like, you know, like the rubber pellets and gas and things like that, just hurling them into the protesters and spraying them and stuff. So you know, there's all these things that they can do, and it is like, it's really dangerous because obviously you can get really badly hurt, you can get dehydrated, all these kind of things, but it's also a really powerful psychological tactic. Back in World War II, they used to call it kettle fever, where people that are trapped in a seemingly hopeless situation like this, it will start behaving irrationally, erratically, putting themselves and others at danger. And that is obviously beneficial to, you know, the kettlers, the cops, because, you know, they want examples of protesters being violent. They want people breaking ranks to do things to, you know, like, and even like another thing with kettle fever is people turning on each other inside there, you know, like a real kind of, yes, kind of like Lord of the Flies sort of thing, like trapped in a shitty situation, and people,
I know that book. Those kids fall in a big kettle. Yeah, it's really bad.
Yeah,
they all turn on each other.
Yeah. And yeah, so, you know, like it's just like it's like the worst situation you want to be in. Usually it is done by police will kind of I guess try and channel a group of protesters by blocking off roads or, you know, like avenues of escape or whatever, so that they will just gradually like kind of push them in towards a block where ideally they want to be the barriers of the kettle. They want to be mainly kind of like walls, businesses, infrastructure, things like that, with as few kind of cops guarding each point as possible, you know. So often they'll plan it out in advance. They'll be like, okay, if a march is going through this area, we want to, you know, try and stop them here, or we'll put up barriers around these areas or whatever. So it's really if you are organizing some kind of protest or march, whatever like that, it's really important that you know the area really well. You know, the people that are organizing it should have a good knowledge of, you know, where the possible kind of choke points are, where the, you know, anything like that. And also just the people kind of will, there's like the psychological barrier of seeing, like, you know, walking down the street and you're seeing at a side street and there's just like some little concrete barrier things that's like you could walk past them if you want, but you don't, you just keep walking down the road. Seeing things like that on the side is a good indicator that it's like, or even, you know, just sometimes it's just like just a cop car parked. It's like, okay, they're trying to channel you down this way. They've put those there so that you keep walking down this way. And that's the point where you kind of go like, well, maybe we need to go that way instead, you know? Because yeah, they'll try and channel you in, and generally they want to kittle a group away from like a high value target, you know, like if this is like a you know, a protest that has a goal, like, you know, say we're going to go, like if it's a protest about wealth inequality or whatever, we're going to go down to the financial district and we're going to go, you know, we're going to go just like hang out in front of Wall Street or whatever like that.
Just chill out and just be there peacefully and just hang out, just do nothing and just have a good time.
Yeah, they don't want you to get there, and they don't want you to occupy that space where it's like you could you know, you could affect the, you know, business or whatever like that, or you could, you know, be throwing bricks or anything like that. They want to keep you away from that. So they generally try to kittle people in you know, smaller streets, so that even like, you know, just in terms of impeding traffic and stuff, they want, you know, to keep the main streets free. They want to keep you away from high value targets. They want to yeah, just try and get you in a spot that is going to take like as little manpower for them to control, so that they can, even if they have a limited number of cops, they can, you know, do shifts and all this kind of stuff. Because in some of the bigger cases, like with the George Floyd protests and stuff like that, there have been maneuvers like this that have lasted for days, you know.
Well, the cops out on when the Roe v. Wade was overturned, and like cops are just policing every street corner just to stop anyone from even congregating.
Yeah. And so the people inside the kittle obviously can't take shifts, whereas the cops can, you know. So so that's something to be really careful of. The there's, once you're inside a kittle, the main thing is really just trying to stay calm, and the usually, like, if you're going to an event that may turn into something like this, it's good to, like, you know, to obviously like stay hydrated, everything, take water bottles with you, take snacks, all this kind of stuff, because like that's the thing, right? Like they want you to be hungry and thirsty, and, you know, like even if just like even if you haven't been killed for long, but if you don't know how long it's going to be, that's when people start getting kind of a little bit frantic, a little bit anxious and stuff. But if you have those things, like if you have water, if you have snacks, it's not just like the physical thing of like, oh, you have something to eat, you have something to drink, but it can be like really reassuring for yourself, but also for people around you and stuff, to be like, oh, it's okay, Soph bought muesli bars or something like that, we can just chill out.
For sure. Like, I brought gummies actually.
Yeah. So that,
but no one should have them in the kettle. I definitely wanted to touch on that. That is really vital. Like, and that's something that's like, especially as we think about, because I think we should think about protest tactics as they stand, and that we should also just be thinking about like the same protest tactics, but we assume that each successive year it's happening in a much warmer summer, right? Like, the same thing becomes way more true, right? That it's like now, okay, cool. If you bring a couple of bottles of water with you, like, and you do wind up getting kettle, then like, cool, you got like something to drink for yourself, and unfortunate to say it, but like an empty container once you've then drunk it, and, you know, maybe water for someone else. But it's like in you know, maybe next year, maybe the year after, like really maybe everyone should bring a bottle of water, like and snacks, like you say, you know.
So all those kind of things help, not just for, you know, like the actual practical application, but also just for morale and stuff. There are tactics for breaking out of a kettle. It's kind of one of those things where it's like you, in most cases, because a kettle maneuver is actually illegal in a lot of places, and in some places it's considered like a war crime and all this kind of stuff. So there have been people that have been kettled in big cities and protests where you know, like you get people that are lawyers that will work specifically with protesters and things like that, as you know, like that's kind of their thing, who will go to court and, you know, basically take the police to court while this is happening and be like, this is illegal, they can't do that, and then have to deliver the paperwork to the police, and then the police have to disband, sort of thing like that. And so that is that's sometimes how it goes down, or, you know, like other similar kind of legal maneuvers, or even just like with press attention, sometimes they'll be like, oh shit, we shouldn't be on video doing this, sort of thing. So, you know, like the cops will just for optics reasons stop. But yeah, there are ways to kind of break out of it that involve like creating, and this is like, you know, this is kind of stuff that we're not recommending anyone ever does this inside of a kettle, because this is illegal behavior, and
This is what
like
illegal wrong'uns say.
Yeah,
This
but
is,
like,
you just please tell us, what do these scoundrels say?
People have said that a good tactic is to draw police or security attention to one specific point on the kettle, in effort to spread out the presence in other points of the kettle, where you can then, so you know, creating a distraction on one side, all the cops kind of get together, and so they spread out on another side, and that's where you kind of puncture through and have to get out. The problem is, though, that it's not, if you just get out, you're one person that's escaped a kettle. The main thing is really just to break the police line so that you can open it up, either get everyone out, or if it is supposed to be a long-term occupation, you know, like a Occupy Wall Street kind of thing or whatever like that, you want to be able to, like, this sounds like real like army shit, but you want to be able to establish a supply line.
Nope, that's really important to say. We need to be thinking that way about protests, I think, from now on, like that we need, yeah, to have supply lines if we expect it to go on for any kind of long time. Yeah.
Exactly. And even if it's just like a temporary thing, like bust out, and, you know, maybe you've got like a mutual aid network that can supply, you know, like bottles of water and things like that to get them into people that need them or whatever, or even just like, you know, like just you know, you get like a lot of volunteers that do like medical aid and stuff like that, like you know, like the classic anarchist street medic kind of they, you know, and like a lot of the time it's like those people are really really helpful, really necessary to kind of get in there, even if it's, you know, not for like, you know, someone who's been beaten up by a cop or anything like that, but just like people that are inside the kettle that are like, might even be like having an anxiety attack or going into shock or something like that. And yeah, you know, like the presence of someone that is like trained in the in medical care and stuff like that is pretty vital. So yeah.
By the way, I don't know if this is I mean, this is always an issue, and I don't know, I don't think it's as much of an issue with our audience, but there are people that when they attend these protests, or when they think about even attending, think about it, they kind of visualize themselves as like the hero of the protest. But all the tactics we're discussing right now are all about people working as a collective, caring about each other, bringing food for one another, you know, like maybe the distraction being caused, the scoundrel, for instance, the illegal scoundrel causing a distraction over there to help the other people. And it's all about working together as a community. We keep seeing this theme resurge over and over and over again. It's all about coming together as a community to work together for the greater good for everyone, and not to be a hero. I know we talked about this prior, like when we had our protests show. I really am pretty certain that our audience doesn't need to hear it, but you never know.
Yeah, I think that's like a really important thing to understand. Especially like I always find that the people that want to be the heroes at protests and stuff are very much like the weekend warrior kind of types, like the people that like aren't very like involved in, you know, like any kind of like wider projects, or like aren't really like known to, you know, like any
But
of the
if you were going to do the distraction and then push for a weaker points tactic, that's where that person comes in. You can tell them, hey, we really need a distraction, and that'll be the most important person here. That would really help us so much.
Very good point.
We would be forever in your debt.
Yeah, to be honest, like the distraction doesn't necessarily have to be like someone like going and like, you know, picking a fight with the cops on the line and stuff like that. A lot of the time,
Yeah.
a lot of noise and giving the you know, the Kettlers, the cops, security, or whatever like that, the idea that something might happen over that end, you know, where they're like, oh look, it looks like they're gearing up for over there. They've got the, you know, like the people with the drums are over that side and they're chanting something and it looks like, you know, whatever. And then you know, and then that can be enough for them to kind of like redistribute their manpower. So yeah, that's Kettling. I don't know if I've got anything else that's super relevant to talk about.
Yeah, I just thought it was probably I thought it was probably the most relevant part of the protest and riot tactics, specifically to us discussing like the hotter summers. I guess I'd like to reiterate the thing about supply chains. I genuinely think we need to think, like, people going to protests need to think of that in those terms. Like, are you bringing supplies? Are you bringing enough supplies to help yourself? Are you bringing enough supplies to help you and your comrades? Do you have any plan for how you would get supplies to move if like you needed to move them to somewhere? I think those are all like logistical questions are going to be the ones that like make or break different protest movements as they form.
Yeah, and yeah, things like first aid kits and everything like that, where it's like, okay, like literally like the more the merrier, you know, like just every like as many things like that that you can bring. Like,
Yeah,
you know, you might never even have to take it out of your bag or anything like that, but just like having it there, it's not just the fact that you might need to use it on yourself or anything like that, but someone else there might need it. And, you know, like something about having to someone you know, and then it's like, okay, well, actually I have that in my bag. Sweet, cool. You know, instead of having to like spend time running around being like, has anyone got a first aid kit? It's like, you've got it. You've got everything you need.
being the person with a ton of medical supplies on them is never going to be a bad look at the protest.
Yeah.
Go for it.
One thing I wanted to point out is one of those things that definitely needs to be supplied and preferably have, you know, in supplied by other people. Masks, not just for COVID, but also for good OPSEC. You know, like everyone should be masking at these things. Everyone. You don't want your face exposed. You don't want to be caught by any of their, you know, body cams, etc.
Yeah.
And also COVID, which is still a thing. It's still killing people in mass. FYI to anyone who forgot.
Yeah, during COVID, there were a couple big protests over here. So there was one at the start of the lockdowns. There was the Black Lives Matter. I think it was kicking up the George Floyd uprising was happening in the States. And there was like a solidarity march down here. And everyone showed up masked. It was an outdoor march. And people were masked. A lot of people were wearing gloves and stuff as well. And there was like no word of any kind of COVID transmission or anything like that. Whereas then the anti-lockdown big convoy thing like that, they were all unmasked and stuff, and they were like literally like, you know, putting out videos all like super sick, like COVID symptoms, like literally blaming some kind of like government Havana syndrome sort of thing. And it's just like, this is the difference. It's like everyone at the George Floyd protests, or, you know, like the solidarity things, they wore masks and everyone was fine. No one, you know, like it was all good. The people that didn't wear masks, like immediately getting very sick. But that was, you know, who knows, government heat ray, mind.
We had the same exact thing here. I think I remember reading about it happening in several different US states as well. Like people could measure there was not transmission between these well-masked, well-distanced protests.
Yeah. So yeah, it's very important, super important, not just for COVID, but also for hide in your face in case, because like we've talked about recently, especially with the Posey Parker kind of things, not just the cops, you know, kind of recording everything to see if they can, you know, charge you with something, but the fashy nerds, the brown shirts or whatever that show up to counter protest or whatever they're doing, having a rally or whatever. They love to film as much as they can. At the Posey Park things over here, they had like a bunch of them had 360 cameras filming everyone around, and then they spent time afterwards like going through the video footage, tracking down people, trying to find out who they were, harassing them at their workplaces, all this kind of stuff. So
wow.
Yeah, so masking is important for many, many reasons.
Yeah. It's also worth mentioning on that because I feel like it's important not to leave things like lopsided. It is like there are places where they do stuff and we need to do the same stuff. There are other places where like they do stuff because they're fascists and we don't need to do that. But like them like combing through social media footage or footage they've captured themselves a ton to try to like find people's identities and harass them is obviously ghoulish. When this stuff like like today at the Posey Parker demo, obviously like that Nazi like went to agitate people and then was in a fight. It's like we need OSINT on our side as well. We need people doing that's open source intelligence, right? Like people going through stuff that is publicly available to like for the example today, like if there's another angle on that like scuffle happening, I'm fairly sure that other angle is going to show like that guy starting the fight, right? But like I can't know that unless people find another angle on it. So like it's important stuff on a lens.
Well, yeah, that happened over here, the same thing, the Posey Parker thing. There was like a bunch of footage that a bunch of shitty people put up being like, oh look, here's here's a TRA punching a person or whatever like that, and then it's like you see the full footage and it's like, okay, well, here we can see it from their own footage from multiple angles.
They were agitating that person for ages and ages, yeah.
Or you just see this person going up and like hitting someone else, or there was like some old dude that was like going around choking people and stuff, and then it's like you only see when the people like hit back, right? Like,
yeah.
Should we maybe move along to the next
point? Cool. The next one might be fairly quick, but I just want us to touch on like food security because I think it's just really important for us to think about it as the climate is changing, like as especially like in the context of heat waves in summer. Like a lot of food gets imported through channels of imperialism. A lot of food is also like willfully exported, as like we've discussed about this before, like American foreign aid, which actually isn't aid and just like crashes people's domestic markets and shit like this. But like, international food relations are quite a significant part of geopolitics. There's also like just, countries needing to feed themselves, and all of that will be put under strain with like massive droughts happening, right? So we reported this a few weeks ago on the news section that there was like new satellite imaging from like I guess infrared imaging of Europe to try to tell like how much groundwater there was beneath it. And before, people had previously thought that Europe had like quite a sufficient amount of it, but it's actually like quite insufficient, which means that like a lot of Europe is likely to be in quite permanent drought after like 2 degrees of warming. That's going to have a massive effect on how much like European states can feed themselves. We've also been covering like the mega basins in France for a little while, and I think that people like it's a bit of a weird one to talk through like why people are so mad about it, because basically like these are projects that are going to establish like state-controlled channels of like water to be able to feed crops, to feed people. And like one of the obvious like reasons people are mad about it is that like it's massive disruption to the local ecology, and it's massive, like it drains water from the immediate area into these reservoirs, so that the same water can then like feed the like large scale corporate farming. But I think it's really important to see that from the point of view of like these states are aware that this kind of change is happening, and they're ensuring that their own channels of trying to feed people will be protected, and at the same time like just cruelly and shittily like cutting off anybody else from being able to feed themselves and establish any kind of food security themselves as well. I think that's like because because when we talk about food, it's like this is such a huge place where people, you know, should like people are going to be looking towards ways to feed themselves, and I think it's worth considering like the protests against the mega basins. One of the things behind it is like about food sovereignty and about people being able to feed themselves without the systems of the state in place. And when the state like very very literally gathers like a resource up and all up into one place, like that's literally what they're doing. Like they're getting all the water and just being like, it's in our reservoir. You know, that's that's like, I don't know. I think that we've covered it with to some confusion a few times over the mega basins thing, and I think it's like quite relevant to say that it's also going to be like another thing that's driving refugee crises, and it's going to be another thing that's like making international relations worse and worse. Is like either countries being without food and needing the support, or like countries who previously supplied some kind of crop that they can't supply because of climate change.
Yeah, and one thing that is kind of like I think has been going on for a while in the imperial periphery is like companies like Coca-Cola and stuff, like it is like a whole bunch, have been you know, like bottling water in places like India and stuff, right? Where they just like literally just like suck up all the water to make Coke or whatever like that. It's like, okay, so over there, yeah, you can buy a lot of Coke, but there's no water to drink, or you know, whatever. And it's like this is happening out in the imperial periphery now, and when it has been like literally for decades.
Like one of the most famous protests that Gandhi did was just going and panning for salt in Indian bodies of water, because the British Empire was like, no, we own all this salt. And they were just like, well, no, like it's our salt that's in our water. Like we should be able to just get it ourselves.
It's the exact same thing, right? Except, you know, and, you know, like now, okay, so it's been like Coca-Cola doing water or whatever, and, you know, out in the periphery, out in India and stuff like that. So this is just going to be in the imperial core soon, you know, like this is going to be whether it's a corporation or it's going to be, you know, like a state run kind of entity, which may be a corporation, you know, functioning as an organ of the state, whatever. And yeah, it's going to be like, it's not going to be yeah, you know, it's going to be like these things that are like vital for kind of like human survival or whatever, that are just going to be rationed out by someone else. So no, but like I think the Coca-Cola stuff in India is like specifically, is like particularly really gross, because it's like they're having all these droughts and everything like that. It's just like, but we got plenty of Coke, you know, and it's like,
oh god, horrid.
It's fucking wild.
Yeah, it's to like I say this all the time, I know, but like Bill Gates's How to Avoid a Climate Catastrophe, like one of his sob stories that he conjures up is like a drought in India, and there's like only a tiny trickle of water comes out of the pipe to feed these people's crops, and that's all they get. And it's just like, it's a fascinating example to pick on, because India has so much like corporate control of water specifically as a resource. Like it's not just that it's a hot place so droughts happen. Like it's not as simple as that. Like water is actually, or has historically been, a plentiful resource. And like India, not only is there like the control of the supply of clean water, like you're saying, like just reduced because like Coca-Cola is using it for their products instead, but like India is a place where neoliberalization has hit water in specific like so hard that like if you live in a poorer neighborhood, it costs possibly like 100 times as much to buy water as a utility than if you live in a richer neighborhood, because they know that the people who live in the richer neighborhood, like this is supply and demand, right? So this is literally like free market economics. If people who are poorer are not going to be able to afford water as often, you should charge them more to make more profits.
Because they need it.
They need it, right? So, but if people know that if people are rich and well off, and they know that they could literally move house to a different neighborhood if in your neighborhood like water is too expensive, then you should be in competition to offer the lowest price to the rich people. And that's where you literally wind up with this utterly, utterly backwards situation. Not to say that like water should be more expensive for rich people. There shouldn't be rich people, but like it is looking at that inequality, it's the exact opposite of any kind of solution that you would want. It's like it costs 100 times more for poor people.
Yeah.
I also want to reiterate just a theme that Sophia pointed out. It's expensive to be poor. it doesn't just apply to this one example. I think a lot of our audience can probably have all sorts of personal stories to attest to this fact that it's expensive to be poor.
Yeah.
I mean, there's like there's so many good examples, but I always think about the Terry Pratchett
the Vimes law.
Yeah. It's like a thing that's gone around in internet circles for years, but from a Terry Pratchett book with this guy, he's like a guard or whatever, and he has to buy boots to work in, but he can't afford to save up and buy the expensive boots that last for years, so he buys the cheap boots, which he ends up buying more cheap boots that wear out, and it costs him more than to buy the expensive boots, but he just he doesn't have that much money at one time to get the to get the nice boots that will probably last.
A really obvious case of being poor being costing more is there is an end game for a mortgage, right? So monthly payments on a house that you own has an end. You can pay off a mortgage, and renting, there is no paying off and then you finish paying those payments. I don't know, I think just mentioning food security was the main thing I wanted to achieve in that discussion. I don't know that I have big poignant predictions or observations or whatever. So on to our final topic of this cheerful and upbeat episode: fascists. Let's talk about fascists, everyone. As everything falls apart, not everyone is going to respond by thinking we have to take care of each other. Fascists are going to see this as a crisis in which they have to protect their own. So fascist organizing is going to swell both in concert with the worsening climate crisis and with the authoritarian moves by the state. That's not necessarily in response to authoritarian moves by the state, because fascists love to paint themselves as being anti-authoritarian if it's against a COVID lockdown or whatever. But no, as a state becomes more authoritarian, more citizens who are this kind of dickhead will see themselves as deputized by the state to uphold law and order. They'll see that there must be chaos if the state is being so authoritarian. And if we always need more cops, because I'm constantly reading headlines about more cops, and I always see these politicians pledging to give us more cops, then clearly what the state needs is people to volunteer as cops.
Yeah.
So I will be a vigilante and uphold law and order, right?
We spoke about this the other week as well, the idea, the hero myth. Fascism kind of pushes this idea that the everyday kind of fascism enjoyer is kind of fed this myth that every person becomes a hero. They become a cop, they become they're the vigilante. They are the one that fucking, the bathroom police, the fucking whatever. We're seeing a lot of that now, especially with, the whole kind of social media kind of thing, where it's people are being encouraged to film and harass people that, that are their ideological enemies or whatever like that. So, we've seen a whole bunch of videos of people kind of going into Target, going into wherever, pouring out the Bud Light, destroying the pride stands, harassing the person going to the bathroom or whatever like that. And it's this is the fascist, this is the everyman hero that the fascist believes himself to be or whatever. And obviously they're just a full kind of embarrassing themselves or whatever. But then they jump back on into the Telegram group and everyone's just wow, base, hell yeah, you did it. And it's fucking absolute brainworms.
Awful.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, what else is there to say? You said it perfectly. I think one thing that's really worth saying is we have a concept of leftist direct action, and we talk about it a lot on the show. But it's always worth thinking that there is direct action in the worlds of other ideologies too. To liberals, you directly go to the ballot box and you vote for the nice guy who's not bad and is nice, and that's a direct action. No, but in all seriousness, fascists view, for example, the refugee crisis as an invasion by black and brown people from far away coming here to take all our jobs and use up all our free services. And so direct action to a fascist involves attacking minorities, and in particular we've seen examples in the UK and Ireland in the past year of organized fascist mobs setting fire to refugee centers, because that is a direct action to them. Because if there's one fewer refugee center for refugees to go to, then they've directly achieved their goals of there being fewer refugees housed, right? Yeah, so like I think that anti-fascism is like, I don't know, we did an episode on anti-fascism a few weeks ago. It's always just worth restating like the importance of getting people to understand like how important it is and will only become more important to like oppose fascism in their everyday lives, as well as, if possible, showing up to counter demos and telling them to fuck off.
Yeah, and yeah, I mean, this all ties in together. Like, yeah, there's the the Fash kind of setting fire to refugee centers. I've also seen them harassing tent cities and stuff like that. So it's like all
Absolutely,
comes
yeah.
together, like all the things that we were talking about. Like, there's going to be more of that kind of thing. There's going to be more, yeah, like tent cities, transitional housing, all that kind of stuff, and they're going to become targets.
And for that matter, queer people too, obviously, because like,
Yeah,
again,
yeah,
in the mind of a fascist, all queer people are pedophiles. So it's direct action to attack queer people and attack like places that queer people feel safe, because those are pedophile hubs where all the pedophiles are organizing to do all the pedophilia, and not just like some people playing video games and smoking weed.
In the meantime, Catholic Church remains untouched by fascists.
Right,
yeah,
exactly.
So it's like,
yeah.
for us, when we see like people that are like, people that are homeless, people that are unwell, all these kind of things, it's like, okay, from our worldview, these are the symptoms of an unwell society, because society is fucked and it pushes people into these shitty positions or whatever. Whereas like from their side, they're like, these people are the cause of the symptoms, like they're seeing it in reverse. So they're like, if we remove the if we remove the poor, if we remove the refugees or whatever, then we go back to the 1950s where we get our like we get our government mandated housewife and our white picket fence and all that kind of shit like that. So they're just like, we gotta clean up the streets ourselves or whatever, as opposed to just like actually like having a brain and thinking like, okay, well, these people weren't born on the streets or whatever, like how did they get there, what happened? Yeah, it's something we're definitely going to see a lot more of. And I think it's going to be yeah, especially coming up soon. I feel like it's going to be more of an it's going to be something that we're going to she talked about a lot more in like election issues and stuff. Like I think especially in local politics, like I know that in places like California and stuff, it's like a really big issue. And like, yeah, New York and stuff as well, where it's like the homeless population has just like ballooned over the last couple years. I don't know what it's like in your cities, but over here, yeah, the homeless population is has just shot right up
Noticeably, right?
Everything, the lockdowns, like COVID, cost of living stuff, like there's like that, we're housing crisis, all this kind of stuff is getting worse and worse. And like people, like even just like even liberals used to just be able to pretend that it wasn't a problem.
We had we just had a propaganda episode. One thing about propaganda and frameworks of propaganda, where like you don't think of it as especially a piece of propaganda, but rather the entire system of news media like has an agenda, a bias, and an ideology, right? Like one thing about that is it's not just about what is said, but what is unsaid. And so like they can cover that there's like, right, they might even cover rising homelessness rates. They may well cover that there is a housing crisis, right? They may even talk about like effects of climate change on the housing market or whatever. But it's like bringing these points together like would lead you to absolutely inevitable conclusions about the system and the way it's not working, or more sinisterly, like the ways that it is working. And it's like, to say climate change, which is being caused by business as usual, is leading to this massive housing crisis, which is leading to a lot more homeless people. Because again, like what's left unsaid, because if you cover that there is a housing crisis and you cover there are a lot of homeless people, like you're not necessarily saying the housing crisis isn't just people not sure where they can move to or paying too much rent. It's people being made to live on the street, right? Like drawing those things together, like I say, like is something that I think that a lot of the liberal news media is anathema to. And yeah, so I think that it's really important for us to state it like plain and clearly. Like when you're seeing the like unhoused population expanding, it's for direct and measurable reasons, and not just like incidentally, oh boy, where did all these homeless people come from?
Yeah.
I think that's something that liberals like to do with that what is not being said part. I mean, there's the implications of all the things they've, all the propaganda that already swirls around them that doesn't have to be explicitly said. But I think it's also if there's no exact reasoning given, it's akin to what you're saying. It's like, oh, it's just like the weather. Like housing prices are increasing. There's more homeless people. And it's always stated in this like very passive way, as if the weather is just homelessness increasing and inflation going up and stuff.
Right, totally. It's we talked about Fortress Europe a few weeks ago as well. Like I think that like and we were just talking about water scarcity, so I may as well conjure the image of Immortan Joe from Mad Max, right, saying don't become addicted to water. Like that's, I think, from my end of things on our Red Planet Zoom call right now, like that's very how Europe looks, is like it's specifically climate behemoth. When we talk about the four planetary futures, like future politics that Joel Winwright and Jeff Mann talk about in Climate Leviathan, after the capitalist countries trying to establish a sustainable capitalism that can stop climate change, Climate Leviathan. Next, they talk about people like state politics shifting to try to be isolationist and hoard resources for themselves. And I think that like between like the mega basins, the refugee crisis, the housing crisis, and the fascists, like when you're looking at Fortress Europe with these factors, it's like, cool, like hyper-militarized borders and a massive political focus on who is allowed in and who isn't, right? And therefore, like what rights are afforded to citizens and who gets to be citizens. You got like a ton of displaced people, not just the ones at the borders, but internally displaced as well. You have a ton of fucking fascists who are the zealots of the fortress, who are like walking around like voluntarily trying to enforce law and order as they see it, I just and then as we were saying, like a control over previously abundant resources like clean water. It's those are describing the features of climate behemoth, the kind of isolationist, resource hoarding, Mad Max ass nonsense. And I think that like the thing to me is like it's all, I think there's a certain amount of devolution happening where like there was a project to build like world orders at the turn of the millennia just now, and like it's rapidly falling to shit more and more in the face of climate change. And I think that like I'm not saying I welcome the shift between like the liberal multicultural world order of everything's great and it's the end of history and whatever into like fascist climate behemoth politics. Not at all. Like it fucking sucks, but like it does represent a devolution where they had one bigger cohesive project that they were looking to do, and it's very clearly crumbling into large but much smaller pieces. And like I think crucially, like the gaps in between there are going to be the places where people are caught into being able to form new kinds of things, because like the dead center of those crumbled pieces are still going to be the strongest, most cohesive parts of their ideology and their structure and their climate behemoth. But the people who are around the fringes, right, refugees who are being kept on the edges of Fortress Europe, displaced people who are targeted based on their identity, are going to be the people who are effectively pushed to the margins, and those are the people where a kind of revolutionary society is going to grow.
That's a pretty good summation.
Thanks.
Do we have any audience questions? I haven't just got one.
Okay. Do you guys know about some things we can give to the homeless to help cope with heat? I feel like it'd be mostly the same stuff you'd mentioned bringing to protests, like water and sunscreen, says Sky Glittering.
Well, I mean, so water and sunscreen, great. Yeah, it is just basic stuff, right? I would say the best thing is always just like, I mean, like, so you can have things on you that you just give to homeless people if you see them, or there's the approach is that you can just ask them and you can just be like, hey, is there anything you need? Most of the time I think it's going to be money. That's generally what's kind of like the most useful, because then they can like spend it as their needs arise. I think things like water, and stuff are always useful, especially on like a really hot day. You know, like yeah, I think water. Yeah, I mean, I would say the main thing is if you really want to, you know, check in with them and make sure they're okay, just ask them. Just be like, hey, is there anything I can help you out with right now? I know people that have like, you know, bought like so we call them jandals, but you know, other countries call them flip-flops.
Yeah, they're sandals made from jeans. That's right.
Yeah. Yeah, so you know, just bought them for people, you know, and just been like, hey, like, you know, what size you want some, you know, if you see someone who is like, you know, like barefoot and it's like a really hot day, the concrete's super hot, all that kind of stuff, you know. Just yeah, stuff like that.
For that matter, like if you are buying people clothes, like buying people clothes is also really good because like as well, there's not just sunscreen, but like sunscreen runs out, right? Whereas if you had like a big baggy long sleeve t-shirt, like you'd be covered from the sun for as long as you're wearing it, you know, like stuff like that is also kind of help people.
We have another question, or if we're done with this particular one.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Prince Infidel says, what's the best practice when witnessing homeless people being harassed by police?
I think one thing you can do is even just to like be there and to be like, you know, and just to check in with the person and be like, you know, see that they're okay or whatever. Because like if, you know, usually you'll get it like they'll be like hanging out on the street or whatever, and you know they might be sitting or lying down somewhere, and the cops will be kind of standing over them and stuff like that. And you can just go up and just be like, hey, what's going on here? You know, like, are you all right, man? Like, you know, just kind of check in and be around.
Acting like a friend who already knows them, I think, is like as an attitude tip. Like, I'm not saying pretending to be. I just mean like the confidence to hit the situation with is like acting like, you know,
yeah,
you're totally on their side.
And if it's in an area that you frequent, like somewhere by your work, you can just be like, oh yeah, no, like I know this guy's around here often. He's fine, like, you know, he's chill or whatever, and just be like, hey, what's up? And you know, if they say, oh, we're moving him along because you know he can't hang out here and stuff like that, you know, like if you're comfortable with it, you can be like, hey, well, how about, you know, like you know, like I'm gonna hang out with him here for a minute like that, and then we'll, you know, maybe we'll go for a walk, we'll go like down the block or something like that. You know, whatever, because I don't know, it's like it does depend though, because like I definitely know homeless people, and I've been in a situation before where they are like, I I want to go in the cells, you know, like especially if it's like when the weather's really bad and stuff, there are homeless people who like they'll be like, well, if I go in the cells, that's a better night than it is out here. So I think it's always worth just kind of checking in and being like, hey, you know, you okay? What's going on and stuff, and just making sure that they are being like, you know, even if they are going to be detained, and even if they're okay with that, that they're still not just getting harassed by cops and they're not getting pushed around or anything like that.
Yeah.
I would say in regards to filming it, you might want to be careful, because that can also kind of be like a bit of a violation of someone's dignity sort of thing.
Yeah, totally.
If you can, you could ask them, you could be like, hey, is it all right if I film you, because I don't think what the cops are doing here is fair. I think like in most situations I've seen with the cops harassing homeless people, it has been kind of like a slower thing where they just kind of will just, you know, come over and have a talk for a while, and they're just like, all right, buddy, what we're going to do is this sort of thing. And so it is pretty like, it's possible to intervene and just talk, and just, you know, even just like if you're comfortable talking with the cops, be like, hey, well, you know, is that necessary? Do you need to do that? You know, like whatever.
Another thing is for like support for people who are being arrested in general, like if that is the way that the situation is going, like there are various resources that you can find out in your local area for like people who do the kind of legal support, for example, and other resources that are good for people who like, you know, might need to use their phone call basically. And like if you know those kinds of things, being able to tell those to someone before they are taken in by the cops is really good.
Yeah, it's it can be hard because yeah, especially dealing with people that are sleeping rough and have been for a long time. yeah, there are a lot of people that it's just like they know the drill and they're fine to get arrested, and they, you know, sometimes actually they're like, yeah, this is what I want or whatever. So be really careful about like, you know, running in and trying to white knight sort of thing and stuff. Like you should always just check in and be like, hey, are you okay? What's happening here? Are you, you know, like, do you need help and stuff? Like, I mean, it's always like, you know, we always just say fuck the police, fuck prisons, all of that kind of shit. But just make sure that you know, like you're respecting the agency of the person that, you know, like this homeless person, instead of just assuming that you know what's best for them or what you want to do or whatever like that. The best thing is always just to check in with them. And this applies, I think, to you know, like people. I saw there was like a thing on Twitter a while back in New Zealand Twitter where some woman got really just like really pissed off, really kind of like had a big whinge on Twitter because she bought some homeless guy some food, and I think he was like vegetarian or something like that, and he's like, oh sorry, I'm not going to eat it. And she, you know, had this big thing which is like, oh, he's ungrateful or whatever like that. And it's just like, man, like you could have just asked him, you could have just said like, hey, what's up, do you want some food? If so, you know, do you have any, you know, do you have a dietary preference, or like a, even just like, you know, do you have any medical conditions, like is there anything you can't eat or whatever?
Like homeless people aren't NPCs on along the way to our journey through a fucking, you know, main character experience.
Yeah, they're not there for you to like fucking launder your karma or anything like
yeah,
that. Just,
right.
like fucking just talk to them, just have a chat. And yeah, you know, and I see people in the chat saying that sometimes they feel a little bit unsafe in those situations. So yeah, obviously always like, you know, prioritize your own safety. But yeah, still sometimes it's even just observing and just, you know, like having the cops know that you're observing them is can be, you know, can be something. It's not nothing. Anyway, yeah, sweet. Let's see. Have we got anything else, or is I think that might be,
I believe that's us. So shall we talk about the Patreon, Kara's
we
favorite thing?
should. Yeah.
I love the Patreon.
I love the Patreon. It feeds Conrad. That's very important.
Mhm.
It does. So for those of you that are new here, if you like the show, if you wanna see more of it, if you want our producer Conrad to, you know, be able to buy meals and survive, you can jump on over to patreon.com/red_planet. And we've got a bunch of different tiers for different kind of, you know, different amounts that all give you different benefits. The first one we've got is Sprite mode. So that's, I think it's $2 American a month. For me, it's $3.50 in New Zealand dollars. And so with Sprite mode, you can get started with your support for Red Planet by becoming a Sprite. And the benefits include the sacred and forbidden knowledge that you are helping the Red Planet team, early access to VODs, and access to the Red Planet Discord. So yeah, we've got our own little Discord set up. We can hang out and chat. We have different channels for memes, games, all that kind of stuff. But if you want to pay a little bit more, Kira, what's the next step up?
Oh, that's Goblin mode for 10 American dollars a month, or what in New Zealand dollars?
So that is $17.50.
17.50, and then pounds
$8.50.
Thank you, Sophie. Everyone loves a goblin. We all get a little goblin mode from time to time. Complete your gobology by going goblin mode with everything from the Sprite mode that Tim just described, and a pack of cool Red Planet stickers for you to stick in legal places and only in places like that. And access to exclusive Red Planet Discord hangouts, which we should be having another one of those soon.
Yeah, we should.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah.
It's really fun. We watch movies and we chat about what we're watching, and it's a really good time. So if you are a goblin, you have access to those. But what if I wanted to give a little bit more? Sophie?
More than a goblin?
More than a goblin.
If you wanted to be more than goblin mode, you'd have to go beast mode. Beast mode is £17 a month. Is it $20? Is it $25?
$20 a month, yeah.
$20 a month. What about you? What about New Zealand?
34.50.
Wow. Okay, cool. I love economics. Right. Holy shit, are you actually going to go beast mode? Well, then we can offer you all the stuff from the lower tiers and pin badges. Yep, pin badges. Wear your excellent new Red Planet pin badge literally everywhere. It is completely cool and good to do. So just to, reiterate, that includes access to the Discord and the Discord Hangouts and the stickers as well as just supporting us. But there is more than beast mode. Tim, what could be more than beast mode?
So until we establish the higher Tesla mode for the the Tesla owners we were talking about earlier, the highest mode at the moment is sicko mode, which is $100 a month American, 172 New Zealand, and I'm gonna guess is it 85
Fucking nailed it.
Yes,
absolutely
nice.
Fucking nailed it.
I knew it was gonna be around there.
Incredible.
And so if you support us this much, we can only really reasonably offer you all the stuff from the lower tiers, plus a very special thank you message at the end of the stream. So thank you so much to JBP and Marilyn Starfire, our resident sickos. Thanks for keeping the lights on in Conrad's basement, and yeah, we might if we get a little bit more, we might allow some, like, perhaps a small heater. We'll see how we go.
Yeah, I'm torn between us giving Conrad some kind of chair and maybe buying him a standing desk. I don't know which I find more.
I think a standing desk is better for productivity. So
that's what I've heard. Yeah, let's go with the standing desk. Okay, cool. Cool.
But
saves us having to figure out what kind of stool to get him, so it's fine.
Seriously though, we are trying to get up a little bit more. If we get the next tier, we will be able to take on an editor. So we'll get someone that will be editing all our videos and clips and stuff, which frees up more time from Conrad, and then from also just all of us in general. Like, that would be a huge thing. It also would mean that we'd be able to afford to do a little bit more stuff. Like, we've talked for a while about actually getting out and filming content, kind of more like documentary content and stuff.
Absolutely.
And then putting that up. So, like actually going out to some of the things that we've covered, like when they're in our area, and an editor would be awesome, because then we could, get them to do all the footage and stuff. So yeah, that's the next goal. I think it doesn't show on Patreon. It doesn't show the next targets. It doesn't have the little thing anymore. They took the bar away.
Yeah. They removed it as a feature on Patreon.
Yeah. So we don't have the little bar telling you how much you need anymore, but which sucks, but whatever. Yeah, so we need about like $350 more or so, and we can start doing that. And we did say that if we got to that point, that Mule would cosplay a hacker, and that we would organize some kind of fun stream where we play like some tabletop role-playing games or something like that.
Probably worth me saying I've figured out most of the campaign for if we do that. I actually have most of the one-shot planned for us to do the tabletop game, but it can only be unlocked by going to patreon.com/red_planet and giving us $350 more. It's the only way.
Yeah. It's the only way it can happen. You want to unlock the secrets of Soph's brain. This is how it happens.
And who doesn't?
And Mule apparently just like really dislikes, or just like hasn't, like just doesn't understand like kind of tabletop role-playing games, and is like has some aversion to them. So I think 5
minutes in, he's gonna be like, this is sick.
I know, yeah. I feel like when he gets it, he's gonna be like, I'm having so much fun.
He's gonna roll the dice 2 times, and he's gonna be like, this is the best fucking thing.
Yeah. He'll roll, and it'll either be a Mule day, and he'll just be like rolling ones, or it'll be like a real Mule day, and he'll be rolling 20s and be having a laugh. But yeah, so that's the plan. Yeah. So
cool.
Well, if our lovely Planeteers want to find more from Kira, where can they track her down?
Well, you could find all my links in my link tree. So it's linktra.ee/Kira Chats, twitter.com/Kira Chats. I'm Kira Chats on Blue Sky. discord.gg/Kira chats, twitch.tv/Kira chats, which is the main one. Also my socials, my not safe for work links, which I cannot explain further. But if context clues, if you got them, you could probably figure out what they are. You can find those in my link tree. So my link tree is Kira chats, all my shit's there. But what if I want to, get more Sophie in my life? How do I do that? Where do I go?
That's understandable. Many such cases. Linktree.ee/Sophie from Mars would get you all of my links. But patreon.com/Sophie from Mars would be the kind of center of everything that I do. I've been working, as I've been saying, on this project about doomerism for like 2 years now, and it's nearly finally fucking done. I just put up the first third of the script onto Patreon, so $3 plus patrons can read it now already. I'll also be putting up a ton of content for $2 plus patrons soon, including interviews that I've done with Ian Danskin and FT Signifier, and I should be doing some more interviews soon. Basically, I'm just like getting some clips from interviews to like, I'm kind of asking a bunch of different people, what do you think the next 100 years on the planet is going to look like? And then I've got some clips from interviews that I'm going to put into the main video, but I'm also uploading the full interviews will only be on Patreon. So if people want to see those, they can only get them on patreon.com/Sophie from Mars. Also, seeing that big project that I care a lot about and I've been working on for a long time. When it's done, it'll be on there. How cool is that? But what will be even cooler is finding out where to find more Tim.
Well, you can find me here on Twitch or on YouTube, wherever you're watching, as Conquest of Dread, which is where you can find the video that we were talking about earlier about Kettling. And you can also find me over on Twitter and Blue Sky as Dread Conquest. Which is more just like shit posting and having fun and having a laugh. We
like to have fun here, so
we love to have fun. We're just we love it.
And our precious Peanut, who couldn't make it here today. Oh, my mistake. Okay.
No, it's okay.
Cutting people off all day today.
Yeah, we just both of us just really want to make sure that nobody forgets about DJ Mule.
That's right.
Who you can find as DJ Mule on pretty much everything. On Twitch and Linktree, just DJ Mule. On Twitter, everything. DJ Mule, you'll find him there. He's got little video he came out a little while ago about Berserk being a really queer polyamorous love story. Lots of fun. And he's on Patreon and everything as well, so you can jump over there, throw some money directly at him. And I think that's everything. I think that's all the Mule stuff. So thanks for hanging out, everyone. Cool. It's been fun. And see
you next week. Bye.